Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. The time is 7:04. We're going to call the meeting of the Halifax Finance Committee to order. It's Monday, August 13th, and we're being recorded by Area 58. I'm going to ask the board members to introduce themselves since you have a lot of your faces in the room.
Yep, my name is Len Casino. I just joined Finance Committee a few months back. I served on capital plan for the last budget season. So I've been a resident of Halifax for about a year and a half or so. I grew up in neighboring Plimpton, went to Silver Lake, all that good stuff. So glad to be here.
Diane Roxton, I'm in my second term on finance.
I'm Melinda Tarsi. I'm the chair of the committee, and it's my second budget cycle on the FinCom.
Bill McEvoy, this is my second term and been on capital planning for 2 terms as well.
So welcome to everyone in the audience. We're going to start with mail. We have a copy of the Beacon and a copy of the Municipal Advocate, which we leave on the table here if anyone wants to take a peek. And I don't believe we have any other mail. Reserve fund transfers and line item transfers, we have none. Meeting minutes. Did everyone get a chance to review the meeting minutes for April 9th, 2018, April 23rd, 2018, April 30th, 2018, and July 16th, 2018? Those are circulated via email.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll start with the meeting minutes for Monday, April 9th, 2018. Of current members present, it was Bill McEvoy, Dan Rexon, and Melinda Tarsi.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from 4/9/2018.
I'll second.
All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
I'll abstain.
Thank you. For the meeting minutes for Monday, April 23rd, 2018, of current members present, it was Bill McEvoy and Melinda Tarsi.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I will second the motion. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
I'll abstain.
Thank you. Okay, the meeting minutes for Monday, April 30th, 2018, of current members present, Bill McEvoy, Diane Ruxin, and Melinda Tarsi.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from 4/3, 2018.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any oppositions? Any abstentions?
I will abstain.
And last but not least, the meeting minutes for Monday, July 16th, 2018, of current members present, Melinda Tarsi, Bill McEvoy, Diane Ruxin, and Len Testino.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from 7/16/2018.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have bills. The following bill, the Finance Committee expense 01-131-5420, the amount of $180 for the Association of Town Finance Committees in Boston, Massachusetts. It's our annual dues for July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019. And again, the amount is $180. Take a look. Is there a motion to approve payment of the bill for $180?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So you all sign where that the sticky is. There's a few lines there. Yeah.
Next up, review and discussion of articles for the special town meeting. We have a copy list a couple copies of the warrant out here.
If people who are up there don't have them, I have copies of them up here.
And you want those?
Do we have a couple paper copies, please, Charlie? We have a couple, we have an electronic and a paper, but thank you.
Oh, sorry, you missed Sticky?
You need one also?
I do, sorry.
It's over there for.
Thank you.
Thank you. So would you want to see that? Yes.
Okay, so we'll start with Article 1. Ready? Oh, I have another copy. Okay, so Article 1. Is the end?
Is that the council agent?
Yes.
Given, I know it'd be regular to go out of order, but just given the audience here, most of them are financials.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, Article 1. To see if the town will vote to appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of money to be expended under the direction of the Halifax Municipal and School Building Committee for repairs, renovations, and expansion of Post Tavern, including the building, associated infrastructure, and grounds located at 506 Plymouth Street, including but not limited to any architectural, engineering, and administrative work associated with this project, the project. Such amount to be expended in addition to the $2 million previously appropriated for this project, or take any other action relative thereto. So just as a reminder, everyone, we're going to take votes hopefully tonight or before town meeting. That's why all of the articles say that finance committee's recommendation will be provided at town meeting. So I don't know if anyone from the Board of Selectmen or Charlie, if you want to fill us in on the bid situation.
Well, I'll give you the very broad outline. I'm not going to go into the sub-bids. They were due a week ago, and what happens is the GCs then build in their sub-bids. They choose which bidders they're using for the various parts of the job and factor that into what they're coming in with the total GC bid. We did receive many bids for the elevator. The GCs were instructed basically to leave an allowance. Eventually, either they will handle the job themselves or we'll have to, again, go out to bid on the elevators, but to leave an allowance in there for the elevator work. And that's, again, built in to the bids. I believe there are staff here from both the architect and project management firm. Just basically, however, if you look at these numbers, you'll see a very large number, and then under alternates, a series of smaller numbers. All those alternates are positive numbers in the sense of, in addition to the larger amount that's shown there, if we chose those alternates, it would increase the cost of the project. And we received 7 bids. They're not in a tight range, but they're in tight enough range that I would, me, not as a professional, but having a little bit of experience seeing bids come in for anything, is that these are good numbers in the sense that we don't have somebody bidding way low and then coming back to us 2 months later saying, oh, you forgot about that. Oh, you didn't ask about that. Or we have a lot of conflicts. And the other bids that came in validate that the number that most people would have bid on based on the bids that came in, based on the contract we put out, is somewhere in this ballpark. Unfortunately, they are significantly higher than what we were hoping for. And I would hope that the architect and project management team will go into a bit more detail about that. And then I would hope also we have a discussion about what our alternatives are. I don't mean alternatives that are listed here as alternates, but what do we do? Is there any way of changing the project at this late in the game? Do we start over? Do we go full throttle and go to town meeting for the full amount we'll need? If so, what that amount actually needs to be is a crucial number also, because as much as the number that's here is important. We have other costs associated with the project.
Before we delve into the details of the bids and the architect piece, can we just get a background of the initial estimate that was voted on in the warrant 2017 and how that panned out?
Let me handle that.
Yeah.
Well, it is initially when we put a cost estimate out on the project, when the $2 million was voted, the cost estimate came in at 1.7, right?
Yeah.
And then adding the few extra costs that are not included in the bid, we went to town meeting with a $2 million figure. And then since that time, working on the project and everything, we had a cost estimate of, on 3/14/18, of the project being almost completely designed. We had a price of $2,567,495. Then we went out to bid and come up with this $2,742,000 figure. And those bids only came in at 2 o'clock today. So we haven't had time really to digest them ourselves together, but it's crunch time and town meeting is Monday night. And Charlie's brought the architects here and OPM. And I guess we gotta discuss why we're gonna...
Yeah, so I guess my next question is the 2 million that was originally estimated, was there been a scope increase since the original estimate? Has there been a change to scope, or is it the same exact scope that would have been voted for back in 2017?
First of all, my name is John Winslow, Winslow Architects, and Chris Keatsa from our office. Not really, no. The March number was based on what's called a design development set of drawings. It was not a construction set, but it was enough information there that we felt we could get a reasonable price on it. And at a design development level, is frankly, we would recommend holding like a 10% design contingency because things aren't known. So that number was $2.576 million. That was the design development number in March. Now that number was higher than the 1.8 million. I'm not sure the 1.8 million that was used as the basis to go over the town meeting. I don't recall, John, I can look it up, what the history of that number was. I'm not quite sure where that came from, but that was not that wasn't before any construction drawings were even begun. That was,
I believe it was a design estimate because originally we thought it was going to be somewhere around $1 million and it came in at the 1.7, and so I think we went to town meeting for the $2 million thinking that was the contingency and that we would have enough money to have this happen.
But that did incorporate the scope of what we're seeing here.
it's essentially the same, although I would say the thing that the site work was substantially increased. So I guess maybe a better answer to was the scope increase. Actually, the site work scope did increase a little bit. We were originally just keeping the existing driveway and having kind of parking as catch can, off the driveway. Then there was a suggestion, well, there's a parking requirement. Let's put more parking. With a parking lot designed for basically the entire front yard of the Pope's Tavern. That was not part of the original scope. Our instructions when we before we got into construction drawings or when we got at the design development level was to break out a number of alternates. We were aware that the number was going to be high. At that point, we were saying it was 2.5, almost $2.6 million was our estimate, and we knew that was way higher than the town had wanted. So we were instructed to provide alternates to see if we could back out to get a base number. And the alternates that we included, frankly, was the result of a lot of discussion with John and with the town. And there weren't that many alternates. There were a lot more that were on the table, but we were basically, for one reason or another, I think the town felt, no, we can't. There can't be an alternate that has to be in the project. So most of the items did stay in, but the ones that we identified here There's 6 of them. We're in an attempt to kind of get the contract number lower than we were estimating it was going to be. And, we're not happy with these bids. I'm not happy being here. I'm not defending these anyway. I'm not, except to say I agree with Charlie. When we get bids that are kind of within a range of each other, that says a couple things. It says the marketplace is speaking, and that the documents are at least tight enough that the numbers are within range. When the numbers are way out of range, one of the takeaways is documents are way off and something's wrong. In some ways, if these things were way off, it might have provided some comfort because we could say, well, maybe there's something wrong in these documents and let's relook at this, which we're happy to do. But I think, I know that back in March when the decision was made to go ahead, the alternative was we said, well, we can price this again, because at that point we didn't have drawings, we didn't have a cost estimate that was at the level of the construction drawings that we'd done. This was, I'm going to say in April or May, or probably about May, by the time we got construction drawings.
Of this year?
Of this year. And the choice was we could go out and get an independent cost estimate again to see what these are, or frankly go out and let the marketplace tell us. And the decision was made, and personally I think it was a correct decision. I may not like the answer, but was, okay, let's see what the marketplace has to say about this. And then we're no longer saying, well, it's who's your cost estimator, and does he know what he's talking about or not? Or do you know what you're talking about or not? I think the takeaway for us, and I haven't studied these enough to know precisely, but I can say a lot of money is going into the existing building. Basically, the addition and design, I like to think it's nice, but it's a simple addition. This is not a big elaborate addition that's being put on. This is an addition that provides the kind of space that the town's talking about, but it's not a fancy building. You might think it's a nice building, but so all I can say is a lot of money is going into the Pope's Tavern itself out of this money.
So just to clarify what you said about the elevator allowance, none of the elevator allowance has been factored in by the GCs right into their.
Yes, it's in the base bid, and technically, Charlie, whether that's held as an allowance, I think they actually included it as a line item, but I'm not.
I don't know either. But it's included in the.
It's
in the base.
It's definitely included. Oh yeah, it's included.
Yes.
The technicality was that was a required filed sub-bid, and no filed sub-bidders submitted a bid. So then there was a discussion, well, what are we going to do about that? And we could either instruct the generals to carry an allowance and just hold the year of outright. And I believe at least one, maybe Chris Craig McBride, or not all the contractors came up with their own number for the elevator without a filed sub-bid. So it's not an allowance, it's an actual amount. And I don't know what that amount is at this point, but it's in there. Yeah.
In these base bids, these aren't inclusive of the 6 options. Those 6 options would be additions to the base bid? Okay, so there's nothing else that we could, sitting here, tear out of the base bid to...
We have a handout, we have a chart that summarizes comparisons. Yeah.
Sorry, just had a look. No, we were looking at it the other way around a number of months ago. But most of the alternates that were proposed that we would increase the size were run back the old Pope's Tavern. The consensus was that was exactly the wrong way to go. The whole idea was, a major part of this project was to preserve that building, bring it up to code, and not doing those things that would just leave us in the same place just wasn't what we wanted.
So that document that we just handed out, I didn't see the one that Charlie handed out, but Charlie, we put together, maybe it's the same, I don't know.
This is a visual doc, a big doc online, just the first page.
Right, we took that and we put it into a matrix that shows the alternates, shows what they call, and I think it's a misnomer on the contract, but they're calling it their base bid, but then the alternates are all add alternates, so if you do everything, it's the base bid plus the alternates.
Yep.
So.
I'll go down
It's 2.8.
So the low bid was 2.8, including all of the alternates.
Right.
So,
And that's just the construction number. The soft costs have to be added to that, which is another 20-25%.
Can you talk about what the soft costs are?
Soft costs include the architect's fees, the OPM's fees, material testing that will be required through the project that's performed by the owner, a contingency, which we recommend at least a 10% contingency, and there could be utility back charges for the power company. There's a number of things that aren't included in the general contractor's bid that still have to be paid for by the town.
I think did we already carry the OPM cost?
The OPM, we haven't signed a contract with. The architect, we have signed a contract with.
Okay.
We only have a contract through bidding
Okay.
for a small amount. But in that 20-25%, and again, it's not a hard number yet, that's sort of a range of...
So you're thinking
would be
another million,
approaching.
another $1.5 million?
It depends on whether you take the alternates or not.
Okay.
If we say 20% and we just go with the base bid, which is not the desirable way to go because of the scope of the alternates, it'd be 1.3 is your deficit. If you take the alternates, we're up to 1.4. And that's at a 20% soft cost, which is on the low side. You go on the high side, we're almost at 1.5.
Charlie, you just missed a very important point,
Okay.
which is with soft costs, we're looking at an additional 1.5 deficit so it would be a $3.5 million project.
So, and I guess...
And part of that, you did such a great job.
I don't think that's quite adding up right, what you just said.
Okay.
The construction cost, you said $3.5 million on that?
No, he's saying the total, because he's saying it's $3 million for the construction, or 2.8 for the construction. And then he's saying an additional 20% would be soft costs, correct? And the soft costs include the remainder of the architect's contract, the OPM's contract,
Utility back
contingency.
charges, contingency. It would not be the remainder of we're including all of
it's all of it.
Yeah, all of the architect, which you've already spent,
thought
you've already
we'd already
encumbered.
spent, yeah.
Right. But it's part of your total, when you started at your 2 million.
Oh, yeah, but I'm trying to figure out how much more we need to come up with, because I think that's what I thought we already budgeted that.
Ken,
Pardon me?
25% is $3.558 million.
So that's the lowest bid with the options plus the 25%.
Okay, so
So the gap is 700,000, 710,000.
And if you borrowed another $1.5 million at 4%, so $1.5 million over 20 years, you're talking $75,000 each year for principal. First payment at 4% would be another 60, so you're talking another 135,000. And we're obviously, as you said, we're trying to do this within the levy limit. We're not going for a debt exclusion for this. Is it doable in the sense of, yeah, if you forsake a lot of other things, that you can do it, but neither Sandy, we didn't have these numbers until later today. Sandy's been out today. We'd have to sit down, run the numbers again, not so much for the year we're in now, but for fiscal 20, to say, okay, if we went ahead with this project at 3.5 and went with, doing it under the levy limit, how much room do we still have if we spent the additional 135,000, at least for the first year?
I don't think we'd have much movement.
There are a couple of places where we may see some improvements, but we don't have any guarantees yet on that.
Charlie, can you just verify that we did not already encumber the amount separate for the OPM and the architect? That I thought we had.
Well, when we talked several months ago, we ran the numbers. We said $2 million is what we've got.
Yep,
100,000 for the architect, 100,000 for the OPM, 100,000 for the contingency, and that left us 1.7 for
Okay.
construction.
okay, so we do have it budgeted in the 2 million, okay. Thank you. So the 135 is the additional amount, not the total amount of the project for the debt payment, correct, Charlie? That's for the additional 1.5.
Right, if the assumption is that the total project cost, including all costs, is 3.5
Yeah.
instead of 2, we need to borrow an additional 1.5, which works out the first year to 135,000.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that prior to that, we had encumbered on, when we were doing the budget last year, about 150,000, am I right?
Well, 2 million would be, yeah, roughly, it's probably a little bit more than that, 2 million again. At 4%, you're talking $100,000 a year, and then plus 80 for the first year's interest, so call it 180,000.
Okay, so,
It may, depending on how, we can get a lower interest rate than 4 if we just did the ban the first year,
yeah,
but.
we have to plan for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to plan for it. So that's about $315,000 under the levy for the debt payment, of which we have already sort of put away. Sandy, do you remember the amount that we put away for that debt payment when we were budgeting last year? I thought it was 150, but I might be wrong. But Charlie's saying it was 180.
I don't remember, Kim.
I think it might be either 144 or 180. I don't think here.
I'm just trying to figure out like how much more of the levy is part of this. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
So we'll probably still continue to have questions from the board, but does anyone from either the Board of Selectmen, architects, or the project manager have any other comments? We open up the floor for any questions or
I'm sure that's just the numbers.
My biggest question is, what, I don't know whether, in terms of the 3.5, is making sure I can show someone on a simple spreadsheet or chart, here's where 3.5 is. It's this amount for the architect, this amount for the OPM, this amount for the contingency. It's, call it, if we're doing the alternates, though I'm not sure we're doing the alternates, but let's not heck of it, we'll see the alternates are included, 2.85 for the construction. Until we get to 3.5, what am I missing in the sense of, because as it is, if we're doing a contingency of 700,000, it's 20%, so 560,000 for the contingency instead of 100,000. So 660,
That's the soft
760,
cost.
yeah, okay, so that, I mean, we're running it through, so 2.85 for construction, your cost, we're saying 7 and change, that's what I'm saying. 560 for the contingency, another 100,000 for the OPM, another 100,000 for the architect. There's your 3.5, we're very close to it.
Okay, so obviously nobody's happy with this number. I mean, we're all in complete shock. But we need to really talk about the alternatives to this because it took, as most of you know, a very long time to get town meeting to actually approve the project. And this was the project that they approved. I think that we had a couple of things against us. I think that the market for construction is pretty active, and I think that that sort of has driven the cost. There's nothing we can do about that. But we need to talk about if the renovation happens, this is the cheapest it's going to be, but can we afford it? And we need to remind ourselves that when we had looked at, I think you had looked at like standalone metal buildings at one point, like we looked at a bunch of different options that were all more expensive than this renovation project. So we're all pretty shocked by it. But I think we need to figure out an alternative or how we can accomplish this because I'm so afraid if we don't do something now that it's never going to get done. And I think before the end of the night, we can have time to sort of talk this through. At the end of the night, I feel strongly that we need to ask the taxpayers what they want to do. So I think we need to come up with a plan and allow the people to either support it or not support it. So I think at the end of tonight, I really would like to walk out with some kind of a plan. And I know none of us are happy about this, but to do nothing, this will never get done. Ever, ever, ever.
Just to comment on that, we've been probably 12 to 15 years trying to do this project. And we looked at new buildings, we looked at tearing down the old police station and building that site. We looked at buying buildings, we looked at steel buildings, we looked at a lot of ways over the last 12 years. And no matter what you did, you come up with the $3 million figure.
And the people didn't support it, but this was a project that the people supported.
At 2 million.
Well, yeah, so
No, I understand, but the
exactly.
concept of it, I get it. But I'm just saying, Tom, they may say no, but I think that
Well, I think
we would be
it's up to, I
doing
think it's up to
disservice.
town meeting to make a
Yes.
decision, I totally agree.
Yeah, but I think that by us going in with, these are the options, none of us are happy about it, but we can't just give up and just say, forget it, without the last fight.
Well, it was just 4 years ago at town meeting, the sports lounge before it was a Happy Dragon. We lost 2 nights in a row, only 11 votes one night and 13 the second night. So.
But we lost.
For $1 million.
Yeah, but we love
Well, we can't go back to that one.
Yeah.
No, but I'm just bringing up the history. I think the history is important for the new people on the finance committee.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what's
We
the,
have done a lot.
what's the delta between this new cost and the new costs?
What?
Having a new building versus...
Well, I think over the past, we looked at buildings, Hanover built a beautiful senior center, and Kingston built a beautiful senior center, and they might have been $3.5 to $4 million. Those are brand new buildings.
Back then.
Back
So
then,
we
we're
need to-
talking, several years back.
What is a couple of years?
What happened in a year with this project? It went from 2 to 3.5.
Well, that's complete the numbers. I know that Sarah, were these closed bids?
I believe they,
Yeah.
Charlie, they were closed bids,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which,
These numbers were closed bids.
I don't know what you mean by closed.
Yeah. And what do you mean by closed? I mean, this was publicly bid, they were all on their own independent, there was no, it's highly regulated,
No
regulations. No negotiations.
Yeah, well, the equipment, they're all electronic, it's now done electronically, so that Firm X sends in a proposal to Bid Docs online. Bid Docs does not see it, nobody sees it. In fact, and what happens right at 2 o'clock, I get an email that says, "Hi, your bids are ready," and that's the only time I could go in and see anything.
And then it all went black. So, do we stop and go back and look at anything? But it's only costing us more the more we keep looking and the more we keep...
What were with the $2 million that was voted on, what was the stipulation with that as far as the taxes? Because that wasn't part of a...
It's
That
going
was-
to be within the levy limit. We said, that was one of the ways of convincing the townspeople to support the project, was that we not go out for a debt exclusion. This project and also the fire suppression system were going to be projects that were going to be within the levy limit. We deliberately, at town meeting this May, not only left our normal sort of 300,000 on the table just to give people a little bit of relief, but we left considerably more on the table so that when these debt payments came in, whether it was, in this case, it's going to be fiscal 20, the first debt payment, that we would have available room. It wouldn't squeeze something else out immediately.
Yeah, so we were, and you remember, because most of you were sitting in the room, that we were pretty fiscally responsible trying to plan for this and trying to be able to balance everything. And, I mean, nobody...
Again, I mean, at the risk of, it's dangerous, I suppose, and I'm open just off the top of the head, but, I mean, just as a rule of thumb, if you were to build a new building, right now, you'd probably use a number of $300 or so a foot to build it, $350, something like that. This building, the combined building, the existing plus the new, is around 7,000, maybe 7,200 square feet in the facility you have. That's the number that's for the building only, it doesn't include site work. So if you do the math on, say, just doing my head here, if you take a 7,000 square foot building, multiply that times 350, that's on the order of 2.567, what is it, 2.45? Okay, well, 2.5, not including any of the site work or the land. I mean, you're approximating where this number is. I guess what I'm getting at is a 7,000 square foot facility. It's tempting to think, well, it'd be a lot simpler to just build a new building from scratch. We certainly thought about that. That's not on the table. But when you run the numbers, and again, it's dangerous, I suppose, to throw out just kind of these rules of thumb, but we would use a number of $300 to $350 a foot to do that. So you get to about where this number is. I'm not justifying this or not, but I think that I think the idea of putting alternatives before the town is a good one. The town needs to decide. And certainly somebody can say, well, why don't we just do a new building? And you know, we can develop a quick presentation that shows a new building of such and such a size. And I think what the outcome of that would be more or less where this is.
Well, because you'd be a year before you'd even go out for bid, because then you'd have to approve, you'd have to get a new architect drawing, you'd have to locate it. So then, again, we're chasing the construction costs, as we can all see with the estimates over the years. We're chasing that cost. And we never, we don't have a crystal ball to look into it to say, oh, is construction cost going to go down next year? Maybe we continue, time it perfectly. It probably won't. Look at you shaking your head.
They never do.
You're not. And I only know because my husband's in, so we make elevator cabs, right? We don't make the whole elevator, but we make the actual box that you ride in. And so I asked my husband, I said, nobody really bid on this. Like, I don't understand. He's like, everybody's so busy, Kim. They are throwing numbers that are crazy just because they don't even want the work.
You make elevator cabs.
Yeah, the box that you ride in. Yeah. I don't personally.
So when you say the numbers for new are more or less what we have here, what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, I'm saying, and Steve may want to correct me as an owner's project, I'm saying I would carry a number per square foot to build a new building. And I'm saying it's $300 to $350 a square foot.
Yeah.
Now, maybe somebody disagrees with that, but, so I'm just doing the math in my head. If that's the right number, I'm saying if you took a 7,500 square foot building, which is comparable to what we have here, and multiply it times $300 to $350 a foot, you'll end up with a number that's somewhere in the middle to high 2 millions. So that's all I'm saying, is that's just and that doesn't include whatever you have to do to the site to make it work. So I'm saying that the cost for a new building, of a 7,500 square foot building, would be similar to this, if maybe a little more, maybe a little less. I'm not sure if it's in the ballpark.
Excluding site work and excluding demolition.
Well, yeah, I'm saying that $2.5 million without including site work, so that probably puts you up to $3 million. It well could be, it well could be that actually you make a case for a new building, it would cost more than this. I'm not saying that here because I'm not positive about it, but so the numbers would suggest that.
Yeah.
You didn't spend it, but
We can bring up the
Finance
concept.
committee, we did a feasibility study and a traffic control study with Red Pomeroy a few years back. And the perfect site was where the water department is, and that didn't go either. We had a huge, they didn't want to move, and they were going to set us up with, office space over there and the container buildings, and it just, nobody wanted to come together to make that work. So we really have looked at so many pieces, and not for 15 to 16 years, I really believe it's more. It's closer to 21 years. We've been looking for space. So we looked at every available space in town.
So when we finally got this approved at town meeting, again, it was a process. First, we had to approve the architectural drawings at first, and we got the support of the people, and then we had to, remind me, Charlie, I think we had, the second vote we did at town meeting was to fund the construction.
Right, for the first go
Yeah.
around, one on Thompson Street.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was ugly. That was a terrible town meeting. But this one, it was the first time that it was so well received, and we thought, okay, because we had listened to a lot of feedback from town residents saying, why don't you just renovate? And at the time, we thought it was going to cost like $800,000. Like when this whole thing started, like 3 or 4 years ago, it was like $800,000. And so we have seen this. We can't catch up to the cost.
And we voted on this at the same time as the school roof project and the fire suppression and everything. And I honestly think that might have been one of the things that was conditioning the response of town meeting too, because at that point, I think the school roof vote came first.
It did.
Yeah. I mean, it did, and I think that when you're already kind of swallowing costs, it seems easier to sort of take things on, and that this looked like a really feasible project. And now I wonder too how taking it out and having it alone as kind of its own major expenditure on top of the fact that it came in far over exceeding our expectations, how that will be received by folks.
Yeah,
Because no one wants a big bill, obviously.
No, and I 100% agree with you, and I think that it's definitely going to be a difficult sell. but I think it's our job, at least I think I feel like we need to explain to the people the history where we are now. And I am not happy with these numbers, but I don't think that we just cut and run. I think that it will never get done, and we're doing such a disservice to the seniors, and I think that we need to, again, come up with different alternatives so that at the end of the day, we provided to our taxpayers and the seniors the different options that they have, and let them decide.
Do we have time to present those options?
We're going to have to present them on Monday.
Yeah, so that's my issue, is because this is obviously a hot topic for many, many years, and so we're looking at an increase of over 100% from the original estimate.
And these are only
to push that in a week, I think is unreasonable.
These bids are only good for 30 days.
I know, but I'm saying we just got them, right? So now we're pushing an increase of over 100% on a project that's been contested for 15 years. In a week isn't, in my opinion, enough time for the taxpayers. To try to push it through in a special in August, when there may have been glimpses of this prior to the town meeting, I think is...
We weren't trying to push it through. I mean, we definitely had a sense.
Perceived, right?
And that's
so
why
1 week and $1.5 million
Right.
increase on a project that was $2 million, I think will be looked upon.
We didn't know we'd only have a week when we set the town meeting, just so you're aware. I want you to be aware of that. Like,
Sure, yeah.
you know how we
yeah,
roll. We
I'm
do
just-
not rush things at all. I understand it's a week, but it wasn't planned that way. It's really because that's when these came in, and that's what the timing was. That, certainly I can speak to about our board. We don't, we would never just, or the building committee, just said, oh yeah, let's just wait for the last minute. It's not how we roll, but I feel like I understand where you're coming from, Len, but if we don't at least try to come up with some solutions right now, I know it's a week away, but we can at least have a discussion. And if we wait, these bids go away in 30 days, and then we have to start up again, and who knows what the cost is. Yeah, it's a gamble.
If it was a margin that was more acceptable, I would agree with you, but this margin is blown to
Yeah,
pieces.
again, we just found this out today.
I know, I'm not
Yeah.
accusing anybody of anything,
No.
I'm just telling you how, again, I'm
Yeah,
still
no, I
fairly new,
appreciate
so
it.
I'm giving you a bit of an outsider perspective on it.
And I appreciate it, I
And
do.
procedurally, if we, let's say we do, one of our alternatives that we come up with is project minus XYZ, right? The original design minus things that we hive off. That would that have to go back out for a new entire bid process anyway, because the project's been changed so substantially? Because it's not just not accepting alternatives, it's removing major parts of the design.
Yes.
We'd have to go through the
Okay,
So, but it sounds like if what we're talking about alternatives, like don't finish this level or don't whatever, we're gonna have to go
Yeah.
back
I
out.
know, I'm just,
Yeah,
I think
the alternative is a small part of the discussion.
Yeah,
It's 95,000.
No, I don't mean these
No,
alternatives.
I agree. We had hoped the alternatives would show bigger difference, but they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sorry, that's me. I'm not talking about these alternatives. I'm talking about if we look at the original design and say, leave the basement out of it or whatever, like hive off of the original plan. But I'm not talking about these alternatives. I'm talking about the alternatives we create
Yeah,
here.
But I think if you sat in on our meetings, we've tried to do that for the past year. They might say, what can we take out of this building to reduce the cost, but still leave the COA with a building that will work for them? And there's literally nothing that, I mean, we might take out 50,000 maybe here or there, but it's going to hurt the COA. And if we're going to spend $2 million or $3 million, we might as well have a building that's usable for the COA.
I don't think there's anything extravagant in the design.
No.
It's that we were trying to pare it down to what would be functional, but not add cost.
yes.
That we knew we were fighting an uphill battle on.
Yeah, just for me, I mean, it's a 110% miss from the original estimate. I think that's a huge number, and I wonder if the town would have voted for it to begin with, had they had those original numbers, would be my first point. And then the other one is, I'm perfectly fine with going to present alternatives, but we have essentially, what, five days to come up with those alternatives and what those costs are. And given our performance on cost estimating for this, I would even question what we come up with for alternatives at town meeting.
I know that part of why it seemed, I don't know people's motivations, but it seemed like one of the reasons we were able to get support is that we were able to fit the original cost under the levy limit. because we're fiscally responsible about everything. But it doesn't seem like with any of these, even with the lowest bid, we could fit this under the levy limit reasonably and still have any kind of cushion left for anything. That leaves aside anything else that we're not seeing coming up, right? Some major project that we don't see. And then on top of it, I presume probably have to just talk about breaking this out in a debt exclusion.
Charlie?
Well, that's, it's either one or the other.
Yeah.
Again, this is why, and I won't have, I'm not going to be able to be here tomorrow. Sandy's not going to be here tomorrow, both for very good reasons. We're not going to have, be able to break out and forecast, what can we fit into fiscal 20? A sense of, if we did this project at this level and put everything within the levy limit, what would we have available in fiscal 20? As I said, there are a couple of things that may change those numbers, but we're also looking at, as you pointed out, a number of commitments. So I'd assume I'd be conservative about it, say, okay, if we do this, here's fiscal 20, we've got 150,000 left. You know, forgetting about not touching the 300,000 or so, but we've got 150 in levy limit left that we can play with for increases in fiscal 20 if we do this project. Or it's 250, or it's 300,000, whatever the number is. And that, you know, I'm not tonight prepared to come to you or the selectmen or anybody else to say, here's the, you know, because it's doable. It's more a case of the town making a decision. Do we say we're going to go forward with this project knowing that it ties our hands a bit to do anything else in fiscal 20 and maybe the next couple of years after that, unless we see some dramatic changes in revenues. And I can't, you know, I know enough to know that it's doable. I don't know enough to say how much money we have left at the end of the day to be able to do anything else. So for, you know, if someone said, could we give everybody a 2% pay increase in fiscal 20, for instance, across the board, union, non-union, if we went ahead with this project? I don't know, as an example.
And can I ask the question, Charlie? Going back when we started talking about the renovations at the school, the two major projects, one that we're finishing up now, we had originally estimated an amount. We could come in under that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I mean, if you take the numbers that this is going up with the numbers that we saved, and we were trying to get it all under the levy.
Yeah, because
how does that balance out?
we were talking 7 for everything besides the fire suppression system, called a mill for the fire suppression. I mean, I don't know that it was that now, in the sense that we're looking for 1.5. I'm fairly certain we've saved $1 million between the school roof siding, doors and windows.
That we would have financed otherwise if it come in. I was just trying to get a balance here of where we thought we were then.
And that would have been debt excluded.
I think your revised budget came in, you know, overall was $2 million from the original budget, but you have to factor in the MSBA and the reimbursement factor. So those are just, you know, the overall numbers. Because John and I looked at this in the office before it came. Yeah, you were at 7.2 original budget. Revised budget was 5.2.
I mean, look at that. Who would have called that? We were way under budget, and this is like, we're all in shock.
So I don't know if you can transfer funds, but you can certainly say.
It wasn't transfer funds. I was trying to transfer load is what I was.
Right. You can say, you know,
offset the load.
We were low on this one now. You know.
So just for clarification, is the building committee's position that the original design has to stay and that nothing can be done to it to attempt to save money at this moment?
As the
I'm just trying to get like...
Yeah, so as the architect stated earlier, this is not it's a good building, it's a useful building, but to change it and to not renovate, let's say, you know, when back in April, when we first got word that this was you know, the estimate was higher than what we had budgeted, again, we were all hopeful that because of the school project too had come in, that maybe this was just, you know, an error or whatever. Maybe it was wishful thinking. Anyway, we talked about alternatives of not renovating, the architect had brought up not renovating the interior post tavern, but as somebody stated earlier, what good is this project if it's still going to be an old building that's got electrical issues and all those kinds of things? It wouldn't be a useful building. So this is really the most conservative building. There isn't extra space. It isn't, anything fancy. And to do anything less, I think, as John stated, is not to have, I don't mean to use the word useful, I can't think of a word because I'm still in shock with this number. It just wouldn't... Functional, thank you, Charlie, for the seniors. So, and as they stated, we would be having to re-go out and bid, and then the bid could come in with all those cuts at 2.7. Do you, like, we don't even know.
That was kind of the point of my question earlier about what's the delta now that we have the new costs for renovating versus new. So if it's 500,000 or $1 million, the townspeople might say, let's go with new. I just don't know. Right?
Even if we had an option to remove a whole floor renovation or something like that to fit under the $2 million, we're still drastically changing the scope with less than a week before the special town meeting.
Some of these things are code-driven too. When you start talking about not doing the rehab in the existing building, you're now putting on a substantial structure onto those buildings, which drives some of the code renovations. And I'm certain that most of the cost is in the old building. Anytime you're doing retro work and you're trying to fit things back in, that's where the lion's share. The building, to the architect's point, is pretty straightforward, except maybe the connections are a little more complicated, but you get into the original building, that's where all your cost is, and you can't avoid that.
You have to do full MAB, ADA accessibility because of how much you're touching the building, life safety.
Right.
So the elevator.
Yeah.
But that was the purpose of renovating the old building, so they can utilize the second floor too.
Yeah, right. With regard to, of course, an elevator, which right there at call it $150,000 is for that.
Because right now the stairs are not safe.
Exactly.
You do not have a safe building.
I was just wondering if there's a cost to the expansion of the building, because right now there's an expansion as part of that, and you said that that was kind of minimal, that most of the work is in the renovating, which obviously we have to renovate the building. We can't go into this project for this much money without bringing that building up to code and, making that renovation. But so what's the cost of the expansion? Because now we're going out.
So by expansion, you mean the addition?
Is it the addition?
The addition,
Yes.
yeah, well,
We don't have a separate breakout.
so you're asking what the cost
I'm
of the
wondering
addition?
if we could reduce the cost
You can
by
eliminate
bringing
the
that project up, by bringing the existing building up to code and making all the windows perfect, all the electricity, all the, the elevator and all that other thing.
But they wouldn't have the big building. They wouldn't have a decent kitchen. It wouldn't, like, the whole thing was to be, it's not a good idea, but the whole thing, I didn't mean to say, I'm very emotional about that. But it wouldn't do what the ideal was, which is to be able to provide a big room for functions and a functioning kitchen, and it just wouldn't be the same.
We have to outsource everything now, so we like to have everything in our building, We do the podiatrist still in the ladies' room, so when she's there all day, we can't even use the ladies' room, we gotta go upstairs. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And the
what we
stairs,
had to live with.
and the stairs aren't safe, so we need to just remember that this is not a great building right now, and it does not serve the seniors very well. So again, we could try to look at cost for a new building, and we could start all over again and a year later and see.
I think, I don't know, for me, I think that should be one of the alternatives to be presented at town meeting. I don't think we can go to town meeting with any sort of confidence with kind of a firm alternative to this renovation.
Well, and I think at this point, since the alternatives aren't changing the design, all the alternatives have to do with how, if voters wanted it, it would be financed. And, since we won't have those numbers for a couple days, and I think it would make it hard for the finance committee to present a recommendation on any particular financing scheme.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. But,
I think what we're missing is that the town has already voted that they want the renovation, they want the addition on it. That's a fact. That's something. They voted to have it done. At the time, the estimated cost, that's what was said at town meeting, the estimated cost would be about $2 million. And that's what it is, it was an estimate. But because it's taken us a year or more to really settle things in, whether it be putting the bid out or getting all everything settled, the cost went up, as in all costs gone up in construction. And that's where you explain it. And we gotta realize that the majority of the people in town that come to town meeting have kids in school. And they rather see the money spent on those kids in school or school projects or something for the kids, playground, than they would on the seniors. That's another fact, you know?
I think one of the things that's gonna, at least in terms of financing options, that I really wanna make sure we communicate to folks is the impact on their property taxes, because we're also dealing with a lot of folks who aren't fixed incomes, and for whom it doesn't seem like a big deal to us to add a couple $100 to our property taxes, but for a lot of people, that's absolutely crushing. And I think that needs to be, because as much as everyone wants to fund everything, we wanna have all of the things that we want for everyone at every stage of life in our town.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, especially when people are on fixed incomes, we're dealing with real life and death scenarios here of their property taxes.
And I would use caution, me personally, to kind of explain that costs go up year over year. This isn't a 4% difference. So I wouldn't even touch that, me personally.
Yeah, if this was within 10%,
Yeah.
even up to 15 or something.
Yeah.
Because again, an estimate is an estimate, but at some point, we missed something here, so.
Yeah. So what would be the selectmen's recommendation?
I don't even know.
I can only tell you what for me personally, I think town meetings, I've been going to town meetings for over 40 years, and the one thing I know is that they're unpredictable. You just don't know. You cannot go in there with any preconceived notion of how a town meeting is going to go. There's so many variables, who comes, what they're feeling that particular night, the whole thing. I think we're a very short window here. There's only one reasonable thing to do. See what it would, what kind of a financing arrangement we could come up with. Present this to the people and say, listen, these are real numbers. Unfortunately, we were working on some things that changed. Nobody's at fault. This is what it is. Do you want to do it? This is an opportunity to get it done. The only other real option is to go back to square one and start all over again. And we don't know where that's going to take us.
That would be exactly what I would explain.
I think if we do that, though, Kim's right, it's never going to happen. We've been fighting this for many, many years.
But you can't force them to do it.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, but if we give them that option, that could very well happen.
Well, that's why we're going to town meeting.
That really is the only
Yeah,
option.
that's why we're going to town meeting.
If there's no option
To
to
ask
change
their
the
opinion.
design, then
No,
our
I
only
agree.
option is explain how it's financed.
We're going to get that option from the floor of town meeting, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
That much I can guarantee.
Well, no,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think we have to try.
Yeah, exactly.
We owe it to the seniors. We owe it to...
We
And I
put it
think-
in front of them and we promote the part that, look, this is an opportunity to get it done. We know it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful for everybody. Here it is. The decision is yours.
And if you can't afford it, to Melinda's point, they can't afford it. And so that's their decision with no judgment. But, you know, I think we've been all in it for so long that I just want it to happen. But I am realistic. I am. And we're all in shock. This just happened a few hours ago. Like, we're just all in shock. But I feel like, you know, I need to be a realist, and we don't have it within the levy. I don't think that it would be a good financial decision for us to even try to fit it under the levy.
The increase?
Yeah.
Or the full amount?
The full amount.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, that would be wiping out a lot of that. Yeah.
And I think
We don't have it.
Percentage, though, or the levy and the rest?
We could, but it would still require a debt exclusion.
further what Tom was saying, and I would say that, as I was indicating before, and you know, we could provide a more fleshed out, you know, alternative that shows what a new building might be. I think your point might be is that we don't have any credibility given that, and I think they might be right, but I'm just saying that I think at the end of the day that all the alternatives that you put before the town are going to be within this price range. I don't think there's an alternative. If you say, let's go back to square one, which we could do, we would be happy to if we want to do it with us. But going back to square one doesn't mean you're then going to come up with something that costs a lot less. We've been round and round with this committee on this. And I'm think it'd be misleading if it was stated to the town, well, one alternative is to go back to square one and design something, and it's going to be a lot less. I don't think that would be, I don't think that's going to be the case. So,
Can I say something here? We've done that 3 times now, gone back to square one. But for you new people on the board, this building is also designed for townspeople to use, not the COA. The big room and the kitchen will be available, and there's actually a meeting room on the second floor that would, Finance Committee could meet at or anything else, because we're short a meeting room.
The way this article is written, it's not written for debt exclusion. So currently, the way this article is written, it would have to fit within the levy. Because there's very specific wording that has to go into an article for debt exclusion. Plus, you have to have a special election. You would have to have a question on a ballot to do the debt exclusion. So I think the only choice is to put it within the levy. At
And do
least
we
the way
have the
this
room, though?
this article is written here.
But it doesn't seem like we have the room, Sandy.
Well, we don't know. That's why, I'm sorry that we're not prepared to be able to give you a good answer. It's, obviously it makes things very tight. I definitely would say that. But how tight it would be, I don't know right now.
And this goes back to the timing issue, because there was a lot of discussion this year as far as what we keep in reserve and what the limit's going to be. And so, again, in a week with an unknown impact on the limit, seems too fast to turn around.
I think that honestly sets people up faster to say no, regardless of the alternative we throw them, because there's no other financing option that we can present that shows the differential between putting something under the limit, what that does to the property taxes versus a debt exclusion.
So, okay, so I...
Is this part already been attempted?
But you could always pass it, we could pass over it.
So we can't change it?
No.
Change it,
I think I think the moderator would deem it too much of a change. Certain things we can change, but that's really...
It can't be changed on the floor?
If it was a minor change, but this is sort of a, like the way that we're funding it, I think is so like to go to a debt exclusion. Because I was thinking in my head, like maybe we could, amend it to be a debt exclusion, and then even though we don't have an election set, maybe we could get that done, and we could, I'm just sitting here trying to think about it. But I think it's too much of a substantial change that the moderator may deem it, that we can't modify it in that way.
Well, if it's a debt exclusion, you have to have a special election anyways, right?
Yeah, we do, but in my head, yeah, I'd rather stick a pen in my eye. In my head, I was sitting there trying to figure out how can we do this, and I was thinking that if we could amend it to a debt exclusion and then hold a separate election at another time. Again, we don't know, as Charlie said, and I totally respect what you're saying about not rushing it, feeling rushed, and I don't want you all to feel that way. Again, this was just given to us a couple hours ago, and with this date being Monday, this is not the ideal situation for us. It's not how we roll. So we're trying to, figure it out.
So then, when it comes to presenting options, the options won't be financing options. There's only one financing option. The option is going to be prioritizing different things in the budget. If we prioritize this at, whatever estimated cost we have, like Charlie said, what can we not do in fiscal year 20 or 21, 22? What do we get our hands tied on for a little bit?
We don't know that answer.
We don't know that.
And you're not going to know that answer, right? You totally don't know that.
We will have, I think we'll have a good answer as to how tight things are, but you'll have a basis for saying, okay, we know if we do this, we're going to have 200,000 to play with in fiscal 20 or 400,000, whatever the number is. And then say, okay, what do we know about our normal increases? Whether it's health insurance, the retirement, et cetera, those things. Okay, plug those in. What do we have left? And it's the same exercise that we do. We're going to be doing it in a few months anyway.
And I'm not critiquing anyone for not having the numbers, because I know we're all just getting this, but I think I'm saying from, like Linda was saying, from a voter's perspective, if you're telling me things are going to get tight, what does that mean for the schools? What does that mean for employee salaries, that kind of thing?
I'm gonna go upstairs and crunch some numbers right now. If you wanna go on to a couple of other articles, and just see if I can figure out at least what would be our first year. What did we put aside for FY '19 that we didn't need to use? And then what would be our first year? At least we'd have that information.
Hey, Charlie, what about
What
that?
else do you need?
One question, I don't know who's gonna answer it, but what happens to the 2 million if we bring this to town vote and they shoot down the increase?
It's still there.
It's still there in the sense of, it's been appropriated, not that we've got it in a bank account, but in the sense of it's still authorized. So that if, for instance, 6 months from now, let's say town meeting says no next week, but 6 months from now, somehow, some way, we come back to town meeting with a project that costs total, all costs, 2.5 rather than 3.5. And we only need an additional 500,000. The 2 million is still authorized, we just need to authorize the additional 500,000.
Thank you, Sandy.
Ken, I have another question. I know that, and I'm still trying to understand the levy, so we set aside 300,000 last year, and we said like, that's kind of like I say, like, we're not gonna touch that. And then, Charlie, you threw out the 150, but we're talking about doing $1.5 million under the levy, so you keep saying it's doable, so I don't
Well,
understand that.
okay, so when we're going to be borrowing the money, while we're spending all of it, we don't have to, we borrow the entire amount, it's just like mortgages. You go out, you get a mortgage for $300,000. You're not going to, the first year, the bank doesn't come to you and say, I want my $300,000 back. No, they say, I want my principal and interest, and work out this payment plan. It's the same thing for whether it's 2 million or it's 3.5, whatever the number is. So what we say is, what do we need to pay for principal and interest in fiscal '20? Can we afford it? And it's the same principle that you do when you're taking out a mortgage, and the bank is looking at it from the other side. Are you going to be able to pay that mortgage? We're looking at it both sides at our end and saying, okay, we want to take out a loan for $3.5 million. How much are we going to pay in principal and interest in year one? Can we fit that within the levy limit and not go to a debt exclusion? Now, when we went for the $2 million back in May of 17, we said, okay, we know what our principal interest payment is once we actually borrow the money. We have factored that into our budget calculations in that we said the $300,000 has nothing to do with this project or anything else. It's basically giving people a little bit, not a lot, a little bit of tax relief. In addition to that, we're leaving other money on the table, so when that first principal and interest payment comes due, whether it's, let's say in fiscal '20, we will cut someplace else so that we can pay that principal and interest. We're leaving enough of a gap so when the bill comes due, we'll be able to fund it. Now, at 3.5 instead of 2, the principal and interest payment becomes a bit larger, obviously.
135,000.
Right, so what we're saying, and what, Sandy's doing some preliminary work right now, is to say, okay, we left a cushion in there. Is it still big enough, or does it start eating into other things that we might want in the future? And we're going to have to make a call as to whether we fund this project and not do X, Y, or Z, or X, Y, and Z is more important, and we can't fund this project.
And I agree with you, Charlie, and I just want to remind everybody, I'm not picking on a particular department, but this has been our reality on the Finance Committee, is that we could have one student come in and affect the services by others, and that sometimes can be a $200,000 placement. So that's almost why we continue to keep sort of that buffer, because we've had to kind of plan for those things. And so, I want this to pass, trust me, but we have to keep our,
Right, there are a number of things that could happen. As you mentioned, Kim, special ed, one kid walking in, boom, and we don't want to be East Bridgewater that deficit spends special education every year and winds up even in worse shape because of it.
Because it doesn't and I don't mean to pick on it, it's our
No.
responsibility, I'm not saying
But
anything
it's
negative
also,
about it.
it's more unpredictable
It's
than a
just,
lot
that's
of
just
other
an
things.
example, right, that's the only example that I can think of that's
when we're funding
unpredictable.
wages and salaries, we make a conscious decision. Do we add people? We know how much money it's going to cost to add people. Do we give people pay raises? We make a conscious decision that we have money available, as opposed to the kid walking in. The other things would be, if for some reason the stock market went kablooey and future retirement assessments increased at a faster rate, we're not there. We don't know. But there's there's your budget buster there. Same thing with the health insurance. The year we're in now was a better year in the sense of the increase for us for health insurance was much less than the previous year. But it's unpredictable. I mean, if you suddenly have a number of claims with our health insurance bank, not just us, but all the communities in it, that affect our premiums and such, then you could see a 10% increase. And that's $100,000 right now for a 10% increase in our health. But, one of the reasons we're leaving that gap is those uncertainties for the future, but that's the $300,000 we're talking about. Is not only does it provide the tax relief, but it does what Kim does, which is provide a cushion so that if an unexpected bill comes due, we're not hitting somebody else, whether it's the other part of the school or any other department, to fund that special ed kid. We can afford to do it without affecting other services.
Yeah, and this will be the biggest disappointed in 24 years that I've volunteered if this implodes, and that's just for real. So I'm trying to think with my practical brain. Thank you, I am. But there is a large part of me that thinks if this can't happen, I feel like Chicken Little, the sky is falling. You know what I mean? We've all been in it for so many years.
Especially when you look at the other towns and what they have to senior centers.
Good point. But that's why we've tried, and I think, and I understand what you said, Melinda, that people may be supportive of it because they just supported the school. I don't know, but I feel like enough people thought it was a great idea that I spoke to and felt like, again, as John alluded to, we've gone, we were on that track at one point. We were looking at renovation, and then a month before town meeting, the decision was to look at the Jack's Place. And then that failed at town meeting, which put us a year behind looking at this renovation. Do you know what I mean? It could have been a lot cheaper back then too. So we have historically stopped and went, okay, we'll try, So I think, and I totally respect what you're saying, Bill, about getting prices for new and having those answers for the taxpayers. But I'm so afraid of waiting that extra year and not having it happen again. That's all. Because again, that is not a safe building for our seniors. So it's really tough. But I totally respect where you're coming from, really.
So while we wait for Sandy, does anyone might want to make a motion to table the discussion until Sandy comes back with just some kind of back of the envelope calculation for us?
So moved.
Anyone second?
A second.
Could we just do the easy articles that I know won't require a lot of discussion?
No, that's why I was back to that. I know we've got.
No, because there's a couple that may require a couple of
discussion here, and I've got other people here for other ones. All right, so all those in favor of tabling Article 1 just until we get some more information?
Aye.
Article 2 is about the ambulance billing.
So I don't know how much you read about the synopses I posted, but basically our core administrative assistant in the fire department's leaving. She's been doing the in-house billing. She's done a good job given her situation and everything, but what the fire chief believes is that we will get a more effective collection rate, much more effective collection rate by going out with an outside firm that's what they do 100% of the time. Their fee is tied into the revenues they collect, not the gross fees the gross bills that we do, but what's actually collected. So they have an incentive to maximize the collections. And it will be more than offset the amount of money we would need to, in addition to what we already have been paying for the ambulance billing to do this. So, all the articles are through the board of selectmen, of course, but in this case, the fire chief, had talked with the board about this and made a good argument that we should go with an outside firm He's gone through the bidding. This was the best offer got based on the proposals he received, and that's where we sit.
And we're also, he reduced the hours of the position to help to reflect the change of workload.
Maybe if I remember, it was 30,000, we get 290, 290,000. Must have 10, sorry. If I remember right, it was a $30,000 investment to get more than 90,000.
Something like that, yeah.
I think it's Sandy's one.
27. No, where is the 27? Yeah.
It's in the sidecar.
Because they said it's based on a fee, so is that like
But yes,
a minimum or something?
So it's a percentage.
It's a percentage of what they collect.
I'll call 3% or whatever the number is, but they'll receive 3% of what they collect.
And is it true, Charlie, that the reason they expect a higher return is because they can be more aggressive at getting the insurance companies?
Yes.
Okay.
Because they,
Sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, because what happens is, most people nowadays have higher deductibles, so this collection agency is able to actually monitor that to know which portion is that of the patient and that is of the insurance company. So he is, as Charlie said, spoke to many people, and hopefully we'll be collecting large amount of fees.
So that's just an estimated amount based on what they think they're gonna collect?
Right.
27?
Yes.
Which if they go over that, then we collected more revenue anyway, so.
Yes. Right, but we'll have, if we have a deficit because they collect more, well, that's not a terrible thing.
Yep.
And it's going to be a one-year contract, and we can always...
2 years.
2-year contract, but at the end of 2 years, we can always decide whether or not we want to go back to billing with them.
Yes.
Yes, because it hits 7,500 now. so.
Remind me, have you got the extra revenue baked in already?
No,
Okay, so that'd be bonus for next year?
yes.
Okay.
All right, so Article 2, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of $27,000 for line 61 ambulance billing of Article 4 of the annual town meeting of May 14, 2018, to be added to the $7,500 previously appropriated for this purpose for a total of $34,500, or take any other action relative thereto.
I was gonna second that, because I forgot it wasn't on the finance meeting.
Is there a...
Is this a raise and appropriate?
Yes, it'll be raised and appropriate. Because it's going to be a continuing expense. There are articles on here that I would consider more of a capital expense. They're not going to be line items that are going to be continued. This is one of those that is a line item, and we should be a raise and appropriate.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve Article 2, to raise and appropriate the sum of $27,000 for line 61 ambulance billing of Article 4 of the annual town meeting of May 14, 2018, to add to the $7,500 previously appropriated for this purpose for a total of $34,500, or take any other action relative thereof.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Is there any other discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Okay.
Article 3 is a cinch, man. Article 3 cinchy.
Oh, yeah.
What happened there is that there was some confusion between me and the regional dispatch. Last year, fiscal 18, we had appropriated money, and we ended up actually with money left over because they had received a grant which was used to offset the operating costs of the district or the group. And so our net assessment was significantly lower than what we had budgeted. So when I asked them back in the winter, was this going to change, they said no. I thought they meant the net assessment, not the gross assessment. And so however, the same grant did not come through. So instead of a net of 125, we're paying a gross of 150. The reason I'm asking for a total, bringing it up to 155, is we have, usually during the course of the year, we have equipment purchases that we need to, for, not the dispatch center, but the police station, so they're in communication with Duxbury. So I need a place to fund those expenses. So that's why it's a total of 155 rather than just the gross assessment of 150.
So this will also be raised and appropriate?
Yes.
So Article 3, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of $20,000 for line 72 dispatch service of Article 4 of the annual town meeting of May 14, 2018, to be added to the $135,000 previously appropriated for this purpose for a total of $155,000, or take any other action relative thereto. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve Article 3 while striking or transfer from available funds. Did I do that?
Well, when we write up the article, we're going to say raise and appropriate.
Yes, the motion will be raised and appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, we rewrite the articles at town meeting.
So you can say recommend that the town raise and appropriate that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve with the recommendation of raise and appropriate only in the article.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor of the recommendation to approve with the stipulation that it must be raised and appropriate?
Aye.
Aye.
So the next cinchy one would jump to 5, because I don't want to get into long conversations with, so when Sandy comes in.
Article 5, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to repair and replace the handicap ramp at the town hall or take any other action relative thereto. So, we have an estimate from...
That's what I was just talking to Scott about. We try to do that cosmetically, the pine boards and everything. We've done it once before, and if we just do that little work, we don't have to replace the whole ramp. I haven't been told why the ramp is illegal.
Illegal?
Well, not usable, but it can be fixed with new railings on it and trim boards on it that are kind of rotted out.
But okay, so...
The problem stemmed from the railings were really weak, and so I was going to replace the railings, put a new railing system on.
But what about
Once I do that, the whole ramp has to be brought to current code.
Yes.
And it does not meet current code. So then it became a discussion. It's just easier to start over, building a ramp.
Well, it's safer and people won't get hurt.
Yeah.
You gonna put concrete or you gonna go lumber?
Concrete.
So...
But Scott, we don't have a price on that, right?
We don't, no.
Okay, so when it first came out, because we've had somebody that it have almost fallen on, and it's, I think, detaching from the building, so it's not in the best of conditions. So we worry about the liability of that. And, you know, certainly, could we bump it to the spring and just put a Band-Aid on it? We could, but that, you know, takes from, we're gonna have to come up with it at some point, whether it's spring or now.
For the winter.
Yeah, further down.
Yeah, and we have, you know, people regularly using it to you know, so, I mean, we didn't bring it to capital planning because it came up so quickly, we haven't met, but...
What do we do about the lack of a number in the warrant? Is that just presented at the town meeting?
Yes, typically, Scott, do you think you'll have it by Monday?
I doubt it.
Oh,
I haven't even heard back from an engineer yet.
okay. So, when I talked to you about it a week and a half ago, you were thinking it could be upwards of $30,000, is that right, or?
Yep, that's numbers that I was given, rough estimate. It's not out of my head, someone else's head. And again, it's all rough numbers because there's no measurements or anything done.
Yeah, they're expensive.
That's why.
I guess this isn't just you.
Yeah, you said this was...
There's no way to come up with a price anyways for town meeting.
Okay, so John's saying that we should pass over it.
Pass over.
Make a motion to pass over Article 5.
Second the motion.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor of the recommendation to pass over Article 5?
Aye.
Okay, so the next cinchy one, is Charlie on?
I'm here.
I think it would be a number 6, and I'm gonna have you explain it, if you don't mind.
So,
Well,
Yeah.
it's just, it's not...
it's a weird, okay, you got Uber, right? And if you've ever taken Uber, there's a fee that the state imposes that's attached to your Uber charge. 50% of that fee stays with the state, 50% gets distributed to the cities and towns where the ride occurred. As you might expect, Boston, Newton, Brookline, Cambridge, Somerville get the vast majority of this money. We had 2,029 rides, believe it or not, of Uber here that originated in Halifax. We get 10 cents per ride. The way the state set this up, People think we do a bad job sometimes. They send us a check, we have to go to town meeting, we have to spend the money on the transportation system that is supporting Uber, i.e. the roads. But nevertheless, I can't just simply say to Steve Hayward, spend $202, we've got to go to town meeting to do it. That's why the article's there.
So we made $200.
So Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of $202.80 distributed from the Commonwealth Transportation Infrastructure Fund to address the impact of transportation network services on municipal roads, bridges, and other transportation infrastructure or any other public purpose substantially related to the operation of transportation network services in the city or town, including but not limited to the Complete Streets program established in Section 1 of Chapter 90I of the general laws and any other programs that support alternative modes of transportation or take any other action relative thereto.
I'll make a motion to approve Article 6 based on what you just said.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
7 looks
I don't have an estimate for it, so I'm not asking you to pass over a town meeting, but I don't have a number for you. I have to call a couple of sign companies. I'm hoping to do it this week.
So we'll hold that Monday night?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this again could be a liability issue. I think we need to have rule signs on there. Charlie, you're gonna have to do this.
Okay. 2 years ago, as part of the Municipal Modernization Act, the state voted to allow cities and towns to have a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit in what's called thickly settled. You have to have so many houses within a quarter mile. It happened 30 that you were allowed to. In addition, they said for the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit, you could do it town-wide in the sense of any thickly settled area route on a street-by-street basis. Problem here in Halifax is, talking with the police chief, for the most part, he doesn't think the 25 is going to be enforceable. And then we'd have to end up, even in the cul-de-sacs, too many people just going faster than 25 miles per hour. However, 30 would make more sense to allow the cul-de-sacs in those areas that might be considered thickly settled. One of the problems with running into thickly settled, however, also is that the MassDOT says, here's the state law, it says this. And the state police say, we're looking at the state law, and it says that, as terms of what constitutes thickly settled. So again, the police chief was concerned that if we do 30 miles an hour, just in thickly settled, we're going to run into a problem with whether or not it's defined correctly here in Halifax. So the consensus from the Traffic Safety Committee was that we should do a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. Your phone went off.
And he went into your pocketbook.
Throughout Halifax, except for those streets that already have speed limits. So for instance, Route 58, you'll see a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit in sections. That's not going to change. Same thing with Route 105 and such. So those streets that already have speed limits would stay where they are. Any other street that doesn't would be 30 miles per hour. It wouldn't prevent us from saying, okay, this street over here that we haven't posted before, we're now saying is 30, we could have a higher speed limit there if we wanted to. It doesn't set, it tries to deal with a lot of the complaints that the police department and the board of selectmen get about vehicle speeding. It allows for more enforcement because depending on the situation, the speed limits might, according to state law, might be 35 or 40 in various sections of town. Some people want us to put speed limit signs without this bylaw. The problem with us doing that is you have to call it a speed study. And what that does is you take 100 cars, the 85th fastest car of 100 sets the speed limit. Well, you can imagine in this society right now, the 85th fastest car is a lot faster than people actually want the speed limit to be. As much as they, talk about long speed limits, at the same time, people routinely break them. And if we set the speed limit up at the 85th percentile or the 85th car, people will speed past that, so they'll go even faster. So this was, I'm trying to solve several problems at the same time. if we do this, it doesn't take effect immediately, it would be special legislation, it would be up, sent to the State House, I don't know that it would pass, but at least it's the first step towards doing that. And if the townspeople say, no, we don't want a 30 mile per hour speed limit, most of Halifax, then we'll find that out, and we'll do it on try and do it on a case-by-case basis, and try and work out the definition of physically settled in case of mass stops.
Okay. All right, so Article 8, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to petition the general court for special legislation concerning speed limits in the town of Halifax as follows. Section 1, notwithstanding the provisions of any general or special law to the contrary, the speed limit on all roads, streets, and ways in the town of Halifax shall be 30 miles per hour unless otherwise posted, or take any other action relative thereto. Is there a motion to recommend?
I'll make a motion to recommend as drafted.
Is there a second?
Why do I stay?
I'll second.
That would be Article 8.
Article 8.
Article 8, good. Any questions or discussion?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, is there a large swath of the town that isn't mandated by a speed limit sign?
Yeah, well, they're under the state's, the state says that unless it's posted and unless it's thickly settled, I believe the speed limit is 40.
Yep. Yeah, because I think the thickly settled is, what, like an eighth of a mile or something?
Right, you have to have a certain number of houses within a quarter mile.
How do you even know that, Libby?
He's remembered his driver's ed training.
Do you use your Kubota down the road and home?
But the problem is, for that to be effective, you've got to have it posted as thickly settled.
Yep.
And we
You
don't,
said state law now is 25 and like thickly residential?
it can be if the town wants it to be thickly settled. It's either 30 or 25, depending what the town wants.
Okay. And then lastly, is there any monetary impact, or is this just?
Well, we'll have to put a few signs up around the perimeter of Halifax that basically says
Well, that was
passes.
my next question, yeah, how do you somebody know from external to the town?
Well, that's why you post, if you go to Brockton, for a lot of the main streets in Brockton, if you're going into Brockton, you'll see something like citywide speed limit unless posted 30 miles per hour, and you have a similar sign up there.
Okay.
And this is just to petition the general court? So
Correct.
Yeah.
Any questions? All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions?
Sandy's back.
You will. Thank you, Sandy. So,
Okay.
we'll return to let's start to Article 1.
So what I found out was what we had been saving for the Council on Aging first payment, the amount of money that we put aside was $185,000.
Oh, good.
Well, it was $185 for Council on Aging and $90,000 for the fire suppression. In FY19, we left approximately $581,000, almost $582,000 on the table. Now, that was with our budgeted figures. What actually gets left on the table, we'll find out when we do the tax recap, which is done in September. So, but that was about what we estimated.
So we had 307 that was not identified.
Which is that?
Which is the 300.
Right. So when I did up a bond schedule using the 4% interest that we've been estimating, the principal is $175,000 so for $3.5 million on a 20-year bond, the principal is $175,000. First year's interest is $175,000, obviously, is $148,750, which brings you to $323,750. Now, what that translates to is about almost 37 cents on the tax rate and $115 on the average.
Additional.
No, that's total.
Total.
For, together, yeah.
That's total.
I'm sorry, Sandy, you said $150 on the median?
115.
115 additional.
On the average.
On the average?
Average. The single-family average household.
Okay. Which is about, what, like $298 or something?
About that. I actually used last year's figures, I didn't update them, but usually it works out about the same.
That's, the 115 is on the increase or the total?
115 is on the total. Excuse me one moment.
This is a big deal for her to be here
I don't
tonight.
know what the amount was of the 2 million.
There must be something,
I thought it was like 70.
something.
Yeah, it was like 75 or something, yeah.
60%.
She set aside 185,000 payment.
I should remember that. I don't.
And we're coming in at 115.
Right.
I thought it was like 75.
It's probably about a head rough or so.
Yeah, okay.
But is principal and interest more than what you set aside for the levy? Is that what I was understanding?
Sorry about that, my husband had surgery, so.
I know, thank you for even being here, Sandy. We feel terrible that you're even
No,
having to
don't worry
be
about
here.
it. So, it's obviously, it's a lot more. But at this point, it would fit inside the levy.
With, assuming no change to anything else.
Right, so if you consider we already left 185,000 extra, well, we're taking up as another 138,750.
So it would be, okay, so another 138. So Charlie, you did really well at your $135,000 estimate.
Charlie's going to be survive.
Is that included in my pass that we just,
Talk about those big numbers.
just do this number 27,000?
Because we had it like this over.
All of this is
Yeah.
on-
Yeah.
This would be for 19.
Yeah, because we're changing, a lot of these were changing stuff from the May.
Okay. So, sorry, somebody was asking, Barbara was just asking a question, if people could just put this all in English for those of us that don't sleep in this language. So, what Sandy had figured out is that we need, so of the 582,000 that we have as excess levy, we would then remove 323,000 from that, right? Then we would remove the 90,000 that we had committed for the fire suppression, and then that would be our balance of excess levy.
About 100 grand.
It's about $258,000 would be in the levy.
We still have to take into account that we didn't get any bids for the fire suppression, so we don't know what that's going to come in.
So it may come in higher, is what you're saying.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we still have some room, but we need to get it all on the table here.
We're not going to be able to make a decision, I don't think, tonight on this. Because you're right,
At
Tom.
least I feel that.
That was really helpful, Sandy, I appreciate it, and I will appreciate it.
And we don't want to keep you here longer. I mean, no, it was 168,000, I'm sorry. It's 168.
I don't know.
No,
Just
we
trying.
can do it. The whole thing is.
Yeah, at least 168.
Yeah, 168.
What
Yeah.
are they looking at for the fire suppression approximately?
Well, we can't, like, to have 168 left and not know fire
And
suppression.
that's assuming the lowest bid with all the options, right? It's not even selecting like a middle bid.
This year, in FY19, would have been heavy.
Well, you couldn't select the middle bid unless the low bid was an invalid bid. It's not a request for proposals, it's low bid wins as long as it's qualified.
Didn't know that. Didn't know. When do we make that assessment, Charlie, whether or not that's
Well,
valid?
that's what we're doing right now. In essence, the bids just came in, the architect and the project manager reviewing them, they're making sure that the firms are certified, just as we had to do with consultants and such. Gentlemen, I don't know how fast that process takes.
I'm dealing with PNS right now on another project, so I don't have any conflict that we're fine.
Excuse me for a minute, sorry. So we're trying to figure out how long it would take for us to know whether or not the low bid is not viable, or we're going to have to perfect the low bid. People just said,
As far as PNS's ability to do the job and their work ethic and DCAM rating, I'm working with them on another project right now. So, at the the high level, I don't have an issue with them as a company.
I don't have a lot.
So if for some reason we go ahead and say to the town meeting on Monday, here's our low bid, including the alternates, we're gonna build that price and not the price of the second firm or the third firm, is that doable? Or are we stepping into something that we don't want to step into?
If it comes out that it's invalid, and now we
Yes.
just appropriated not enough money.
Right. Where are we gonna be versus Monday?
I think we need to review it right away.
We can review it quickly, although, there has been a file subject.
Right, yeah, there's a protest in one of the files, so I understand that.
Yeah, but as far as processing our end, it can be done, quickly within the week.
Well, that protest was a lower bidder than what's being carried anyway, so.
So the article currently just says a sum of money. Is that going to be,
I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
I think, because we have to be realistic about this. Charlie,
Yeah,
I think that the moderator will deem it too much of a substantial change if we try to change it to a debt exclusion on the floor. Do you think I'm wrong?
I would say so, yeah, because you're talking about a different vote.
I wanted to be wrong, but thank
I
you.
mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we'll talk with Dennis on Thursday, but to me it would be, a substantial enough change to say, not give the townspeople enough
No,
warning.
it is, right.
Because what we're saying right now is that this vote on Monday is the be-all and end-all. If you say it's debt excluded, then you'll have people who, depends on how they want to do things, but you might have people say, I don't have to bother coming in Monday. That was town election. I can vote no at the town election, and then the whole thing goes kaput.
Well, I don't know if this is even a finance-related recommendation, but to not even have it on there now and then to go in Monday with a 100% increase, I mean, having that number in there in the printed warrant may sway a person one way or the other.
Right.
It's just, in my opinion, it's just way too high for, even if we can crunch numbers and say we might be able to make it happen, we don't really know. And again, the other issue too is that they went through so much work for the original town meeting back in May as far as what to keep in reserve and what limit to tax at. It's such a substantial increase, I worry about how it's viewed.
I think we'd have to have the same conversation that we had with the department heads and everyone else back in like February, January, when we were really worried about how our cushion was gonna come in, and we sort of kind of laid everything on the line. I think we have to have another one of those conversations if we're gonna project that we're only gonna leave $160,000-ish under the levy from here on out.
do we know what the appetite might be for the town if we chose to move that too long to a debt exclusion and go to a special election? Do we know what that might, I mean, what could occur?
For some people, it'd be 6 in one and half a dozen in the other. But I think the big thing is that idea of not touching your emergency savings, right? Which is what we try to do by leaving room under the levy for the unforeseeable, or for the things that, like we said, the expenses that we can't anticipate, like one student moving in or out of the district.
And the other problems are that the bids are only good for a certain amount of time. I know, I have to talk to Barbara Gaynor about the logistics of holding a special town election. And it's further complicated, obviously, that we're already having we're having the state primary on the 4th. I mean, I assume, let's theoretically say that it would take about a month to do this. I don't know that, but a month. So we're talking the middle of September. Setting aside the costs, the other, there's two things. One is the bids are only good for a certain length of time and may not fit within the election cycle. And the second is I guess a political decision. For those people who want the project to go forward, my belief has been that it is much harder to get a majority vote at the town election for a debt exclusion than it is to get a 2/3 vote at the town meeting. The best example I can give to you is, for instance, for the fire department back in 05 and 06. That wasn't a debt exclusion, that was an operating override.
Yes.
But the vote at town meeting was probably 9-1. The vote at the town election was more 55-45.
And that was for the fire department. and everyone else.
Right. So,
So the debt exclusion was harder to prove
Yes.
than the,
yes, the only example, because the only example I can think of where it wasn't radically different between town meeting and the town election was back with Silver Lake. That was overwhelmingly, I think, approved at the town meeting and at the town election. But we're getting the feel of the century from the state in terms of reimbursement and such. So it may have been playing a role in that. But, I mean, let's put, I think, for instance, we talked about all seasons. We've done a debt exclusion for that. We, was big. We couldn't even get the 2/3 we needed at town meeting. And it would have been that much harder, even if it had passed, to get the debt exclusion in the election. But that's my 2 cents.
Can I just mention about the high school vote and the middle school vote? Those were with 72% reimbursement.
Right,
I think that certainly helped.
That's what I said.
In those buildings, again, if we think about the conditions of those buildings, they were really awful. And so that was, that's why I think we had such support. But people see the high school more, people see the middle school more, and not a lot of people are certainly aware of how terrible our senior center is. But
We could ask the contractor if he would hold his bid longer if the timing works.
But, the board of selectmen is the one who makes the decision whether or not there'll be a debt exclusion. It's not the finance committee, it's not town meeting in the sense of, there's not a separate vote whether we will have a debt exclusion. It has to go to the board. The board will be meeting tomorrow night. I'm sure they'll clue me in as to what my marching orders are. As to a debt exclusion.
Tom first and then.
Yeah, Charlie just,
Sorry.
yeah, that's okay. I was going to comment that it's ultimately up to the Board of Selectmen. But there is another element to the debt exclusion. There is a faction who believe that going inside the levy limits us from spending recklessly down the road. Not that we do. I don't want to suggest that we do. But it kind of boxes us in with our spending. Whereas if we went for a debt exclusion, now all that money that we have, that we left on the table, theoretically is available to spend on other things. And a lot of people have an aversion to that being the case. So there's a lot of different things in play. We're going to have to debate this tomorrow night in terms of wherever, if we in fact decide to go with debt exclusion or try.
I agree with Tom, but the one factor that fits in is who shows up at the town meeting. Whether or not the people who really want it to pass rally their voters and they get them back. Because I've seen the place fill up with 700 people and at the end of the night it's 5 people in the audience. Based on whether that they voted for what they wanted to vote for at the time.
I don't know if I don't want to put you guys on the spot, and I'm perfectly happy to speak about how I feel about the subject, but do you have an opinion at all? Are you leaning one way, or do you want to wait and discuss it tomorrow night?
I personally wanted to wait and discuss it. I mean,
well,
to everybody's point, I mean, if we were coming in looking for 300,000 more or 500,000 more, we're looking for $1.5 million more. I mean, that's significant. We're all going to look a little stupid up there.
Yeah, I thought at worst we would be looking at 500,000. And I was thinking, oh, Charlie, remember we sold that piece of land on Elm Street?
Yeah, I wasn't even bringing that up. Yeah, it was a couple hundred.
Right, I was just thinking, oh, we could really try to make this work. And again, this will be the biggest disappointment in 24 years, and I'm not just saying that. Like, this is something that I really personally feel strongly about, but I also can't stop but think and know that I have to make a decision that's best for the community, and we've always been very conservative. So I don't want to make a decision with my heart and forget the logical sense of, wait a minute, we always sort of, I call it the buffer. We always keep sort of this buffer, and that's, I know there's a misconception that we like to spend taxpayers' money and we don't really think about it, but really we all really spend hours thinking about it and vetting it and trying to make it better, because we too pay taxes in the community. But so I think if you asked me today, I think I would say debt exclusion.
I mean, just speaking for me, I think it'd be a lot easier for me to make a recommendation if I knew what the financing options were, definitely. If I knew whether we can go to debt exclusion, because my big thing personally is the buffer. and leaving it there, because I do like the idea of the emergency savings, just from what I've seen.
Yeah, I'm with Melinda. What's the rule on voting on a levy limit override?
What do you mean by the rule? I'm sorry.
What's the procedure or
Okay,
process?
so the board of selectmen is the deciding body on that. They have to, for a debt exclusion or an operating override or anything like that, to appear on the ballot, it's up to the board of selectmen to make that decision. Not town meeting, not the finance committee, not me, not anybody else. It's only those three people. If they say no, we don't want a debt exclusion on the ballot, it doesn't show up on the ballot.
And the sad part about it is that Monday night, if the moderator decides that it's too much of a radical change in how it was presented to the public, we won't be able to even put forward an option of a debt exclusion unless we have another town meeting someplace down the road.
And forget, yeah, and with, besides the wording, I think to Bill's point, or maybe Len's, it's 110% more than, and we don't even have an amount in this.
Yeah, the timing stinks, unfortunately. If this was several months ago and we could have, coordinated.
Due diligence?
Yeah, due diligence, but even just to let the townspeople who maybe voted for it originally know, I mean, we sent it out with no number. So, maybe they figured, they sent it out, maybe there's a 10% margin of error or something, that's not enough for me to go one way or the other type of thing. So it's just, again, 110% increase, that's a lot to not have printed in the warrant prior to the meeting. And again, I know it's not nefarious whatsoever, but there may be a perception from some that, you didn't put it in the warrant and then you went and voted on it in a town meeting. It was a $1.5 million increase after, a year and 5 months or so after the original vote. So that's my issue.
Let me meet with just one last issue, and I gotta go because I have occurred to.
Me too.
So does Johnny.
The whole idea of going before the town and saying that we need $110 million more, in order to carry the project through.
Just get it through the fact.
I'm very simple in my thinking. We go before the town meeting, we present it to them, sure as hell from the floor, somebody's gonna come up. Because I've already had people approach me and say, well, the school project got started right away, how come we haven't done anything with council on aging? What are they waiting on? How come they haven't done anything yet? We ought to take the money back. And those, believe me, I talk to a lot of people in town, and it's going to change as I'm out there. And that's what, I honestly believe that our approach to it should be very simple. You present what the case is, what happened, and let them come up. Because somebody's gonna make a comment, well, you buy a new building for that cost, we can do whatever. And then they're gonna make the decision, because no matter what kind of planning we do here, it still comes down to who shows up at that meeting on Monday.
Can I ask the OPM, can you give me some examples of $500,000 worth of soft costs?
Well, the soft costs include your, and we were just using percentages.
No, I understand, but because this impacts the whole number. I mean, not dramatically, but it does impact it. And I'm just curious what your thoughts were on the soft costs.
Your designer's fee is one of them. The OPM fee is the other. Now, our OPM contract was very small up to bidding, but if we're going to have clerk services on the site, that's, for an OPM, that's the lion's share of the budget, is being there. And I think we've got this project budgeted at 9 months of construction. If it's full-time, it's a fair amount of money. If, we figure there's probably going to be part-time, I mean, that's in, a range of, a couple $100,000. Okay. You have potential utility back charges from the power company. We don't know what that's going to be until it comes in, so you carry maybe $30,000 for that. You've got testing fees for material testing. Because of the new building code, there's more requirements there. What used to be a $10,000 line item is probably a $25,000 line item. So it's a bunch of small items that add up. Again, is it definitely a $500,000 number? No, we gotta narrow that in, and some of it you're not gonna know, but we're using percentages here.
I'd rather be over than under, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather be?
No, I agree, but you know, if this is just a percentage number and then you took a real number, or a more real number, let me put it that way, and it was a couple hundred, I mean, even a couple hundred here, we've got a couple hundred that we got from that land sale.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of this offsets, I mean, it doesn't make it look quite as terrible. It's still terrible, but maybe not quite as terrible. That's all I was getting at.
And the other item that's in that is also your construction contingency, which we're setting at 10%. And it's 10% of the, you said at 10% of the bid price. So there's
And-
another couple $100,000.
Yeah, and so like in April, when we thought it was going to come in at 2.5, we were hopeful again the school project would come in under. So we weren't really panicking, but we were preparing and trying to figure out, what the worst case scenario. So for it to come in at this price today, it's, again, just.
But that's what I was getting at earlier, Kim. I mean, if you take the total of all we thought we were going to spend and what we're now going to spend, it may not be that much different.
Okay.
You know what I'm getting at, because the bids came lower on the other project, which we thought was wonderful. And
Now we have
obviously
change
was
orders.
hoping that we would find a similar event this time, although intuitively we all knew that wasn't going to be the case.
I kept holding out until 2:01.
What are our options, Linda?
We could move to table and take this up on Monday with whatever other information that comes out after the Board of Selectmen meet tomorrow. We could make a recommendation tonight just based on what we've heard tonight, or we could hold our recommendation to the floor of town meeting. Seems like in terms of our role in this.
And we have to vote on the article as written,
Well,
as opposed to like if someone was think there should be a debt exclusion, how would that be handled here today, right now? For this, as it relates to this article?
You'd be not recommending the article, because let's assume for the moment that Dennis says putting a debt exclusion language on there would not be within the four corners of the article, not giving sufficient notice to the townspeople. If you believe that that's what Dennis is going to say, then you're not recommending it. I mean, you could make a general recommendation, yeah, we're for this, but only if it's a debt exclusion, and then we wait until Thursday and I get word from Dennis then as to whether he'd allow the language to be changed to debt exclusion, for instance. One other group I need to check with is, if we're thinking along those lines, is to check with bond counsel, because as much as Dennis might feel with it's sufficient notice, bond counsel might feel differently about it.
I actually have a question about a clarification. When if you act on this, is that you're not acting on an actual accepting so-and-so's bid, you're acting on an amount of money, right? I mean, because there's this question about what the bids are, and I agree with Steve, the bids, they certainly could be asked to defer it, and frankly, I wouldn't recommend that you be driven by the bid deadline. If it doesn't turn out to work, it can be rebid, so, but I guess, just asking you, if you're tying yourself into a particular bid versus a particular amount of money. I'm assuming it's the latter, but.
I think everyone can go kind of what they're, like, my personal thing is what's holding you back from anything is to not know the scope of the potential financing scheme. So depending on what the Board of Selectmen and depending on what the moderators say about whether or not it could potentially be debt exclusion, that would change the way that that's what I personally like to know. I don't know how everyone else wants to.
We're not really tying ourselves to anything, it's just a recommendation that we would bring to town meeting to say we think that this is a good article, we recommend it or we don't.
This way or that way.
Yeah, we're not tying to a particular, we're tying to a number for the town meeting, I suppose, right? But we're not.
But for you personally, Lenny, I would guess that you are more toward a debt exclusion?
Yeah, I think if we had this number several months ago and it was printed in the town warrant and there was discussion like we had prior to the annual town meeting, then I would say present it to the town, but to do it on less than a week's notice when you've had, again, I know I keep going back to
No, it's fine. But you're leaning more toward a debt exclusion. I think Bill is leaning more toward a debt exclusion. I think you said you were sort of leaning, and I don't know, Diane.
It's just I'd be more likely to feel confident in that recommendation as a member of the finance committee, if that were the path that we were able to take.
And just, I'm sorry to make you reiterate it, Charlie, what's the process again if it were to go to exclusion?
So if we're working, let's say we don't, the board of selectmen doesn't make any decision on the debt exclusion. Let's say that Dennis says it's within the 4 corners, let's say bond council says it's within the 4 corners. We go to town meeting, the final motion includes debt exclusion language. The board of selectmen then meets at some point later, says, okay, town meeting has said they want this to come up for a debt exclusion, the board makes a decision whether they want to put a debt exclusion on the ballot. Let's assume that they do. Then let's call it a month after that, we have a special town election, it's yes or no. If it passes, hunky-dory, project moves on. If the debt exclusion vote is no, this is where it gets a little weird, because the first 2 million, the original motion was, or the original approval wasn't debt excluded. And the 1.5 million is what we're debt excluded. I don't know if the intention of the finance committee is to say we want to debt exclude the whole thing. That radically changed, okay.
No.
That wasn't my idea.
No,
I was thinking about debt excluding the 1.5 or the
Right,
additional.
okay,
Yeah.
so let's assume they're only debt excluding the 1.5. Then if it's, we're back to where we are right now, which is $2 million has been authorized. We have no project that fits within that $2 million budget. So then it's time to say, okay, what are we doing now? If it's yes, you know, if the debt exclusion passes, then fine, we're moving on. If it doesn't pass, then we're back where we are right now. If it, you know, the same thing in essence happens if there's no debt exclusion. If we go to town meeting, the motion passes without debt exclusion, great, project moves on. Motion passes, does that pass without debt exclusion? Or where we are right now?
My question is, to the people that are sitting in this room right now, are they in favor or not in favor of the council on aging building being built? Because I think that drives where you're gonna be.
So personally, I'm totally for it, and I will probably vote for it. I just, from a finance standpoint, I think we're better served.
I understand, we've gone through the financial part, but that question hasn't been asked, and I think.
I'm indifferent, whatever the town people feel, but I'm just trying to be cognizant that we, again, all the work that went into this last town meeting, because it was a crunch year, it's just, for me, it's too much of a discrepancy to recommend it with less than a week's notice. So the project.
I don't disagree with you, I almost didn't come to this meeting back because I'm really upset the way it came through.
Personally, I'm 100% for it. I think the town needs it.
I'm personally in favor of it. I think in my seat as a FinCom member, I'm more concerned now with what does the financing side look like, and does that make sense given other commitments and other realities, so.
Thank you.
Can we have
I think that helps.
2 articles, one that's contingent?
No, because the warrant.
Yeah, it's already
Okay.
We're recommending them.
So we can either provide a recommendation tonight to the finance committee, wait till the floor, or we can wait, we're posted for a meeting just before the special town meeting. We can make a recommendation there. The benefit of that is that the board of selectmen will have met, and then any other information that comes in between now and Monday night, we would be privy to.
Table it for Monday night.
So is there a motion to table our recommendation on Article 1 until our posted meeting on Monday night, August 20th?
I'll make the motion to table it for Monday night.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? So it's a 3-1 to table till Monday night. Well, and it was great to have everyone in the room tonight so we could hash through all of these things out loud, and I know it's late at night, and we all really, really appreciate it, and I think that we all just want to get as much information on the table, I know personally as I can, for Monday night to make the best decision possible, but thank you so much, everyone who's here.
Just three things. Number one, I want to vote tonight, but that's okay. The second thing is, I think for Monday, when we get back, we need to know what the numbers that were that's been approved, and then I think we do need to go back to these general contractors and have them give us an extension in the event that a special election is required.
We were just talking about the low bidder, right, the one with...
Yeah, should we bother asking the low bidder if they're willing to extend in the event that this gets voted down?
I think the low
First
bidder,
two.
Yeah, first two.
Yeah.
Lowest two, maybe just in case the other one doesn't want to, and the other one's
Well,
willing
we won't
to.
be able to afford the other one if we...
Oh, that's true.
Well, yeah.
Well,
so stick to the low guy.
No, but-
It'll feed the number that we were...
I'm sorry, Tom, you're right, you're right. So-
All right, thanks again for the order for that.
Thank you.
That discussion here.
Thank you.
No, I like the Wiggles side.
Oh, anytime. Yeah.
Seems like a great day.
Not enough to make
Tim, do these gentlemen need to be here tomorrow night?
I don't think so, unless, no, I don't.
We're not going to have any more, we're not going to have any more information
No,
next
thank
24
you
hours.
though. I think you're good.
Let me know if you do.
We're going to be meeting, we're going to be meeting
Unless they come up with a couple $1 million
by Thursday at 4 o'clock, I need to have something more solid
We
about.
were to shut it.
So they're not gonna put any
Yeah, no
Are you gonna come bug me in the morning?
At the town meeting.
All right, we're gonna continue on with approving the articles. Sorry, my flash voice.
I'm staying.
Article 4, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to relocate the computer room and any associated equipment and infrastructure, including any and all construction costs from the first floor of the town hall to the basement of the town hall, or take any other action relative thereto.
Melinda, I do not have an estimate from Caesar. I don't know that I'm going to have one in time. The minute I get one, I'll get it to you.
Thank you. Okay, so, does anyone want to make a motion to table Article 4 until our meeting on Monday, August
I'll
20th?
make a motion to table Article 4 for Monday night's meeting.
Any second? Discussion or questions? All those in favor of tabling? Aye. Aye. Article 9. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for Line 53 fire chief salary, Article 4, annual town meeting of May 14, 2018, to be added to the $110,000 previously appropriated for this purpose for a total of...
Can we get to the other, is there anything else besides the fire chief and the town administrator articles?
Yeah, there's article on that one.
Yeah, because
So did you do anything with
yeah, for the wheels part, I still waiting for an estimate to sign. Big deal, so if you can take it out. The wheels part.
Oh, yeah. All right, could you do me a favor? Why don't you do the other city ones, because other people are here and it's late, which is, and then we can do the contract ones
Okay, so
afterwards, I think.
for Article 11, those are changes in the seal of weights and measures. That's part of, these need approval by town meeting, changes in the fee schedule.
Okay. Article 11 is see if the town will vote to approve the following fee schedule for the Department of Weights and Measures. All of their fees not listed shall not change. For scales and balances, 1,000 to 5,000 pounds, current is $6, proposed is $75. From 100 to 1,000 pounds, current is $30, proposed is $50. For 10 to 100 pounds, current is $18, proposed is $25. Under 10 pounds, current is $12, proposed is $25. Liquid measuring meters, inlet more than half to 1 inch, gasoline or diesel, current $20, proposed $30. Reverse vending machines, each machine current applicable, proposed $10, or take any other action relative thereto.
It needs to bring them more to align with the fee schedules for the other communities in the area.
Is there a motion to recommend Article 11?
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 11.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Are there any discussion or questions?
Yeah, what are we paying for 1,000 pounds? Is it 50 or is it 60?
Sorry, for the 1,000 to 5,000, we're paying 60 right now, we would pay 75. Am I missing something?
Probably because it's not 101.
Yeah, it's not.
They both.
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah. I'll ask.
I'm okay either way.
Is that small, is that a small enough administrative change to make it the meeting?
Yes.
That's pretty minor.
Yeah, not worried about it.
So do we have a motion to recommend and a second to recommend? Second to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor of the Finance Committee recommending Article 11 as written?
Aye.
Article 12, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to repair and/or replace the HVAC unit in the recycling center office and the heating unit in the rec department section of the town barn, or take any other action relative thereto. Do we have estimates on?
So for the water department portion, the estimate is 9,500, and the recycling center is 7,000.
And there's a heating element to this, right, which is...
For the recycling center, it's HVAC. For the water department, it's strictly heat.
Are these like central air type things, or is it like a wall unit?
No, they're wall units. They're mini splits, such like you see in computer rooms and doctor's offices, stuff like that.
So that's separate from the garage then, from the town, the barn?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, do they actually use that though, over there?
Yep. Actually, it houses the water for the building too, so
Okay.
it definitely needs to be heated.
All right.
Do these cost, is it just replacing what's there, or does it include some carpentry work or whatever? Infrastructure?
No real carpentry. I'm doing the bulk of the electrical work, so that's covered.
Are these costs inclusive, or is this just the units?
It's total installation.
Okay.
Is there a motion to recommend Article 12 as printed with the additional totals of the water department at $9,500 and the recycling center at $7,000?
Make a motion for Article 12 to see the town will vote to raise and appropriate transfer from available funds a sum of money to repair and replace or replace the HVAC unit in recycling center office for the sum of $7,000 and the heating unit in the water department section of the town barn for the sum of $9,500, and take any other action relative thereto.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye.
So I would recommend that you go to Article 4 next, which is the computer room.
I wouldn't have thought we already went
Oh, you did? Yeah, we have no,
haven't got a cost of it yet.
Okay.
There's some other alternatives.
Oh, okay. All right, well, I was up then.
Go back to typewriters.
all we have left are articles 9 and 10.
Yeah, okay.
For the books of the 2 salary articles.
Yeah. Which one do you want to go first?
Number 9.
Which
See if the town will, that's fire chief.
Okay.
See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for line 53 fire chief salary of Article 4 of the annual town meeting of May 14, 2018 to be added to the $110,000 previously appropriated for this purpose for a total of.
Oh, okay, so that. Your turn.
That's your cue.
My cue, okay. So first of all, I have not discussed any of this with the other 2 selectmen because we have not met since the numbers came out, which just came out ironically again today, right? So this is just, I haven't talked to you guys, so stop me. So we were thinking a $5,000 increase to his salary, and then I can talk about the justification of that if you want. So, as you know, because it's a contract, we can talk about the person and not just a position, so that makes it a different game. So all of you are aware that our current chief has written many grants, and more than 10 times the salary he has gotten in grants, and he's been a really great chief for all of us. And you know, when we were pursuing the Plimpton thing, you know, I had secretly hoped that that was going to help us put him closer to what, you know, was more of a deserving salary. So we do like to do the 10 towns, and I do have the backup of that, but I do want to talk a little bit about the Plymouth County when it comes to those kinds of, you know, our chief, if he goes somewhere, will most likely be in the Plymouth County area. So I do think, I just want to mention it to you, but I'm basing the numbers off of the 10 towns that we all use consistently. So when we look at the 10 towns, and this is exclusive of insurance spreads, okay? This is just salary. And when we look at it, the average salary is close to $119,000 for fiscal 2019. And he's at 110. So it's just going to get us closer to what his salary is. It's not putting him at the average. Certainly, some chiefs make more. Some chiefs, I just want to just mention, like, you know, Carver, who does not run a paramedic service, that chief makes $137,000. So, you know, I think it's a pretty fair wage. And I will just mention to you that the average Plymouth County fire chief to date makes $146,000. So I think it's a fair wage. Again, you know, he's not told us he wants to leave, he wants to be able to stay, but we also need to pay him a fair wage. So
What was the average on the 10 benchmark towns?
it was 108, almost 119. It's like 118.8. Yeah. No, I was proposing. See, I haven't talked to you guys. So I was thinking, because we normally would do this in executive session, but we had to come before you, so this is your hearing for the first time. So what do you think?
I don't think it's enough, personally. I think to keep a chief of his caliber in a competitive atmosphere, I think we got to get realistic. I know that a neighboring town that has a much smaller department is advertising at just over 100. You know, for somebody new, somebody inexperienced, I think we should at least go with the average. Personally, I don't want to insult a capable administrator, executive officer of the department. He does a fabulous job for us. And honestly, in the original negotiations, I was sort of thrown in the side, going, wait a minute, we can't go on. Then I came full circle, because we have a quality individual in this position right now. And if we were to lose that person, we're going to have to attract somebody of some quality, and it's not going to happen in small numbers.
The most important thing of any group, of course, is the foundation. Since he's been in, Jason has built a really great foundation of firefighters, paramedics. He's written grants that have brought and saved the town thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But not only that, I've sat through at least 4 fire chiefs that we've lost to other towns because of the fact that the money was better. Not so much that the working conditions were better or anything of that.
And in combination with health insurance, because you know, there are towns that are far better than we are.
Well, I would just tell you, Cushionette 60-40, Berkeley 60-40, Carver 75-25, Dayton's 75-25, Freetown is 75-25, Halifax is 50-50, Hanson's 80-20, Lakeville is 75-25, Rochester's 50-50, and Whitman is 65-35. So if you include the additional insurance benefit, then the average salary is 122.
Give the Rochester base salary?
Yeah, that is a part-time, that's 60,557.
Part-time?
Yeah.
So, what, do you want to go brush fire or something?
I was gonna, Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, the chief does an amazing job. I guess just again, I just why, how come we're getting to this for the special? My question.
Because during the Plimpton thing, we thought we were gonna make it right. I thought that was a great way of trying to make it right, and I didn't, And that's why, because I was hoping that we were gonna be able to do it anyway at the special town meeting, because I thought we would be partners with Plimpton, and therefore, we had done the salary survey, as you know, being in the fire study, that we, the salary should be that much higher at an area this way. So that's why it's at the special, and it wasn't done at the annual because we were still in the fire study thing. So I was still hopeful that we would be able to partner with Plimpton and do it that way. And when it didn't, we thought about waiting to the spring. Jason had sent us a memo asking us if we were still considering it. And so we wanted to consider it again because of all the things that Tom said. And again, I'll remind you about the grants, and they're not easy. They're required chiefs in
I
the
have
county.
no personal experience.
Yeah.
The chief does a phenomenal job.
Yeah, so
He does his homework.
he makes so I didn't mean to lowball. I'm just trying to be.
Another issue is that we're about to lose a very outstanding police chief. If we were to lose both those gentlemen at the same time, I'm not saying we're not, we'd be a big hole.
So correct me if I'm wrong, didn't the police chief's salary at the last town meeting increase more so than?
Yes, and that was to make up for paid vacation. Yeah.
Because of his retirement.
Yeah, but right now we're talking about just these two positions for town meeting because we're in the process of finding a new chief and we don't know what
That pretty much happens
qualifications.
every time somebody's going to retire.
Yeah.
Whether they have vacation time.
I just remember looking at the warrant at the town meeting and I saw that the police chief's salary was increasing
Yeah.
more so than everybody else and the fire chief had nothing.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, that's kind of strange, so.
Yeah, no, it was vacation pay, so. Anyway, so what do you think? Do you want to put him at the average?
What was the average?
119.
119, like 118.8, so.
I'm fine with that.
125 is what I was thinking.
Is the meeting the Board of Selectmen tomorrow night, the meeting's gonna come up with a firm number that?
No, I want to talk to you guys about it, because
I don't know if you want to come back.
No, I would rather just decide that now, so that we go into town meeting.
Taxpayers would be good with the average,
The average, which is the 119,
the 118,
what, the 118.8? What do you want to, 119?
And this happens outside of wage and personnel because.
Yeah, because it's a contract.
Contract.
Yeah,
Yep.
so, do you feel comfortable with the one?
So,
Oh, you wanted to speak up?
yeah, so for the other chiefs that were measured, how many are also paramedics?
Paramedics.
Not all of them are.
So the ones that are, what is their salary?
I don't, oh, this one doesn't say it.
I'm with you, I'm in the buck and a quarter range.
It doesn't say. But he's also our emergency management director. So that's another thing that's this isn't on the cheap, this is not on the list because that varies. But, not a lot of these chiefs carry those two helmets during a storm, which is huge.
This is probably the single best thing we can do for the community.
I think the people in the department working for them are big too. We've been having that discussion for 2 years now.
But we can discuss, we can talk about that because we opened for contract with the fire department in January. So we can, certainly, again, with the fire study, we thought we could address it, but that doesn't look like it's happening, so we need to sort of write that as well. So I'll leave it up to you.
If we raise up to the average, we're a little bit above the average now, and then through the course of fire study, we realize that we want to make another incremental change after we
Well,
have
can I
that.
just make a point? Actually, let's talk about this. So right now, he's in the middle, so this would be year 2 for his contract. So we could come up with a 119 now, and then a 125 for the 3rd year, because then we would open a contract. I don't know if you want to.
But you say it's the upper bid,
Yeah.
because we're going to raise that to 125.
Yeah, so you
It's
could
not
do,
voted, yeah.
you could do, but we would enter the contract and then it gets
No, in
voted.
a town meeting.
Yeah, but they wouldn't vote the second year, they'd only
The
vote
second
this
year,
year,
yeah.
yeah. So you could do the 119 and then we could negotiate to
I don't know if I want to project to 125 or anything.
But we'd have to change the 3rd year
We
anyway.
have to change it, but that's in negotiations.
I think this might put you in a more comfortable place to start those negotiations,
Okay.
which everyone's gonna, it sounds like we're all very positive feelings about anyway, but I think that this also, given what else is on the warrant, makes it an easier, more digestible fight.
Okay.
Not to beat a dead horse, but again, what is the average for the salary, what is the average salary for the police chiefs on that list that are also paramedics?
The fire chief,
You mean fire chief?
I do not have that.
You said
Bill.
police chief.
Yeah, fire chief.
I do not have that, but I know at least
About a
3 are
third of
not.
them.
I know at least 3 are not. I know that Hanson is, I know we are. I don't believe Carver is. I don't believe that Berkeley is. And I don't believe Rochester is. But I don't know that for a fact. I didn't have that.
One of the things that becomes problematic when we use our 10 towns is we've got a lot of these towns that are out in the middle, not the middle.
Oh, I can tell
People
you
say
on
urban,
Plymouth
middle
County.
nowhere. But we're competing with surrounding communities like that are larger, Kingston, Pembroke.
So Abington has a
Yeah.
basic, Brockton is basic, Carver has none, so they're not even an EMT. Duxbury's a paramedic, Hanover's basic, Hanson is basic, I thought he was a paramedic, but he's not. Kingston is a paramedic. Marion, Marshfield, they're all basics, Plymouth is a basic, and so is West Bridgewater.
So Duxbury and Kingston.
Duxbury is a paramedic and Kingston is advanced life support, so that should be paramedic. I don't know why he wrote advanced on that.
So what are those salaries?
Okay, so for Kingston, the salary is $134,000, and for Duxbury, it's $164,000.
So I think if we look at it from that perspective, I think the 119 is too low, personally.
Well, you gotta figure how many people are under those departments, what's the population of the town as well.
They're not one of the benchmark towns, so.
Yeah, so one of the benchmark towns that's on here is Hanson, and that's one of ours, so let's look at that, right? So Hanson, who is just a basic life support, which is an EMT, not that it's just, but. His salary is $130,659. Yeah, he is a basic.
So
And I should mention too that in another month, our fire chief will have a master's degree.
my perspective was the 10 towns are on this list for a reason, and so I excluded that kind of information.
Yeah, you don't want to pick the highest either though, because in your, the characteristics, so there's a reason they're higher typically, but
There's a reason we just benchmark towns.
I mean, the average is less than 10%. 10% to me is more than reasonable for the chief from what he does. I'm talking like 20, in your opinion? From current? Current's
It'd be
110.
like 12.5%.
I personally think if you take to get to average to town meeting, given what else we're going to be talking about that night, explain that we're going to have an MPA and all this kind of stuff, and then the Board of Selectmen, when they go into negotiations, can bring it even closer to, I would even argue the median, not the mean salary. I think the median's a better measure of the middle point. And then you can bring the chief closer to the median point in negotiation. So that was just, I just think given the COA vote and everything we're gonna have.
Strategically, I think you're right, even though I think you deserve it.
Yeah, I would love to give, my personal thing is I think he deserves more than the 119.
I'm sure you'll be glad to hear it.
He does a great job.
Yeah, no, it is a fantastic job. I have one of my students intern with them, but I think.
Okay, so what are you thinking? So I'm trying to.
119.
Yeah.
So if we say.
And then we'll negotiate the third year, and we'll let you know.
Yep.
Okay.
We have some cards in reserve.
Okay, so do you guys want to do your motions and vote on that?
Okay, so the total, see the town will to appropriate or transfer from available funds some of the money for line 53 fire chief salary of Article 4 in the annual town meeting of May 14, 2018, to be added to the $110,000 previously appropriated for this purpose for a total of $119,000 or take any other action relative thereto. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve Article 9, total amount of $119,000.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your support. Okay, so now we're going to move on.
Okay, Article 10 is our last one.
Okay, so we're going to
Leave if you're more comfortable. Of course, I'm going to be right over there.
What do you think chair to the wall.
It's
Really
amazing.
echoes of the carpet too.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think they're a pretty independent group that I think they, you know, I'm not speaking for them, but I think it'd be cool. Anyway, so we all know Charlie. We know that Charlie's been with us for over 20 years, and we know that, and I could talk individually about Charlie because this is a contract, so it's not about the position, it's about the person serving in this role. And, you know, I will be upfront and say that Charlie has not complained, you know, not that that's not a reason not to give a fair wage, you know, which is, some people would say, but, you know, this person is so dedicated. And in a world, like when he first started, we had more engaged volunteers. And it's really just society that has changed that, and not for anybody's fault, but we don't have as many engaged volunteers. And that sort of fault, like Charlie is sort of, you know, where everything falls to. He's at the end of the, you know, the line. And so if he's there to assist everybody, and certainly his job has evolved over the years, and you all know that he's there for all of us, you know, regardless of what board or committee, they will say, yeah, Charlie did this for me, or Charlie did that. So, you know, he's often here on Sundays. He's, you know, he's now, his newest job is to sort of set things straight on Facebook, which is, takes up time. It takes up a lot of time. It certainly does. I applaud him for all that he does. And so we suspected that he was underpaid. And, you know, last spring when we were addressing a couple of the wage and personnel things that had come up, you know, some of you who I've talked to privately have, you know, I'm sure you've talked to the other two too, have said, you know, the person that I think is probably the most underpaid is Charlie. And, you know, he, again, last spring, when we would talk about it, would be like, you know, it is, I know you'll set things straight at some point, and, you know, I mean, it's with an undemanding way that we come to you tonight and say that, yes, he is grossly underpaid. And I think that he has saved the community so much money, again, is so dedicated. And without Charlie, I don't think Halifax would be what it is.
And it came up in reclassification last year too. It was truly noted.
Yeah, and so, you know, I mean, we all rely on Charlie. And again, I will remind you that we don't have as many engaged volunteers. And so that, all of that burden falls on the full-time employees. Not a burden, I don't mean, but what can't be done by, you know, a board or committee member. And again, we're so appreciative of any time that they have. But people's jobs have changed over the last 20 years, certainly. So I'll take you through what the average is, okay? So the average, and we're just using the, you know, our 10 towns, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give you one number first, and then I'm going to give you another number. So the average salary is $116,000, roughly $500. Charlie makes $95,438, so that's a deficit of about $21,000. In addition to that, when I first did this calculation, and again, I just got it today, so they haven't seen it.
Don't start worrying about it.
I'm sorry. No, it just came in, so we have the intern working on it, and she,
Tom, I don't know about you, but I come up here every day, she never talks to me.
No, you know we don't break the open meeting law. Right, for sure. So, anyway, so one of the salaries seemed a bit low. It was $77,000. I was like, that doesn't make sense, like for a town administrator.
Part-time.
And I found out that they were part-time. And they also, like, that was their portion that was dedicated to the town administrator. So then I just fixed that. And so now, the average salary is $124,189, which means Charlie is $28,800 unpaid.
Plimpton just hired somebody. What did they come in at?
So Plimpton just hired somebody for about $98,000, I think, and they don't even work full-time.
Okay.
Or $100,000, I don't remember.
I think it's 95.
Oh, $95,000, and they work from home on Friday, and they're new. Like, we have somebody with 20 years in a Columbia, I mean, he is the book of knowledge of everything. I mean, I know you all have experienced that. Wow, how did you know that, Charlie? Or, hey, Charlie, could you figure that out? You know, he's the book of knowledge. And again, this community would not be the same without him. And I feel strongly about it. We haven't talked about a number, right? And I'll lowball it right now, and you guys can just because I was trying to be aware. So this is just a talking point, okay? So what if we did year 1 at 105, year 2 at 110, and year 3 at 115? Again, he's not even close, but I'm trying to be mindful of money. So go. go, oh, actually go.
So what was the average, Ken, on this?
So the average is 128,755.
Excluding the 70.
No, that's including the, I prorated the 77. I prorated that, I took it, I divided it by, I put it to a 20-hour-a-week rate, and then I times it, and, sorry, I didn't do the means. I did the whatever, yeah.
These are 3-year contracts?
Yes. Well, with Charlie, it would be because it's a new contract. So Charlie has been a wage and personnel, and we have talked for a number of years about making him, in most communities, the town administrator is by contract. So we're a little late on this, to be honest. So this is, sorry.
So this is going to be a contract?
This is going to be a contract, so he will no longer be part of the wage and personnel. So then we can have things in there as goals and all those kinds of things, you know. We'll negotiate.
So are the other towns on contracts?
Yes.
Okay. And are they all in the same cycle? I just don't know how to system.
I don't know if they're on the same
They
cycle.
would be all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not as if everybody's contract is up on June 30th of 19, for instance.
Right.
Because
And
people come, for instance, I'll give you Tom Cutler over, Coulter over in Kingston. He just started 3 months ago, so he's not going to be on the same cycle.
And he's making like, I know, it's not part of the, it's not part of the, he's making 155. So if we look at the insurance split, you got 60-40, 60-40, 75-25, 75-25, 75-25, 80-20, 90-10, 75-25, and 65-35. I don't have the split for Rochester.
Kim, could you explain the difference between the town administrator and town manager?
Yeah,
I know
so-
some are, and some are town administrators.
These are all town administrators, just so you know.
Kim, do you want me to speak to them?
Yes, Charlie, you
Sure.
could, but these
So
are all town
general rule, every single community is different. Town managers will have more executive authority. They will tend to do more hiring and termination of employees, especially department heads, for instance. Now, in some communities, they might choose somebody to be the building inspector, but that goes to the board of selectmen unless the board of selectmen does something different than the appointment is held. It's, in many cases, town manager, it's their budget. It cut, all the departments send their budgets to that person. The town manager then pushes a budget. It may not be what the highway department wants or the fire department wants, but it's her, his budget that goes to the finance committee for review. Those are the two biggest differences, I think, or three. Just generally more executive authority. You're directing, you're responsible for all these other departments. 2 is you're doing the hiring and firing. 3 is budget, where you have much more role, I guess. I mean, obviously I play a role in the budget here, but it's not my budget. Departments are submitted to you. In Community X with a town manager, it's that person's budget that's sent. As I said, every community is different because generally, if you have a town manager, there'll be a charter for that community, specifically outlining the duties, responsibilities, powers of that town manager. So Kingston might have, I don't know, I can't remember if Coulter's the town manager, but I'll pick on Kingston. But Kingston, Pembroke, I think, is just switching over. But Pembroke's town manager may be slightly different than Hanover's town manager, as an example.
And you know he attends 99% of your meetings, and he also attends wage and personnel. He also attends other meetings, so he's available at all times. So it's just certainly not a 9-to-5 job, and it's hard for him to use his vacation time. So
I wasn't involved in any of the activities over in Plimpton, but I'm in the building there quite a bit because I'm still a part-time building inspector in Plimpton. And I kind of, heard about the process to hire a town administrator. Bottom line is, that was the minimum they had to offer to get applicants. And in a town that's half the size, theoretically half the problems, although every town's got their share of...
Maybe relevant.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then juxtapose that with Charlie's involvement in the town and all the nights he puts in, and the weekends. I mean, it's not just an occasional Sunday. I mean, you can drive by on a Saturday or a Sunday and see his car out there.
There's a man in the booth for the July 4th thing.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
And
But his involvement in the community, he's become part of the community, which is, you know, an extra additional step that a lot of administrators don't go to.
And the sign.
He's hugely underpaid. I feel as strongly about Charlie as I did the fire chief. We need to get a compensatory salary figured out for him.
So you said 155 Plimpton, right?
Oh, no.
No, that's Kingston. Plimpton was 95.
So again, the average salary was 124, 189. And so, we'll pick on Hanson because that's on the Plymouth County and it's also one of our 10 towns. And that person makes like 120. And then we have, you know, like, they vary, obviously that's the average, but you have like a Cushnet at 125. You have, what was the one that was really crazy? Carver at 159.
We're in the wrong business.
Right?
So, I guess what I'm thinking, I'll just throw it out there, conceptually, we go with the 3-year, I think you said 105, 110, 115.
Yeah.
Statistically, if all the other towns happen to be on the same cycle, Charlie will always be behind.
Okay.
Well, what was your reasoning for the recommendation that you gave?
Again, it was a financial, like I was being cheap, which I shouldn't be, but I.
Conservative.
My only concern would be if you go in too high, then kind of people might balk and you get nothing.
That was my thing about the fire chief too, like, not to confuse them, but if we go in too high and he gets voted down, then we get nothing. So I think, I like the tiered idea. But.
What's his current salary?
95,434.
So to go to the average would be like a 30% increase,
Yeah.
which if you start there, again, is just my concern that people will balk.
Yeah. We're gonna have to do this increment. And it's gonna be.
Believe me, there was one question
We can
that was
start
being
with
asked of anybody who approached me.
110.
I thought salaries were dealt with at
About
the
110,
annual town
150.
meeting. So there will be a group there that's going to look closely at that.
Have you read my disdain yet for the special town meeting? I have to disdain for those.
What if
No,
we
you
did,
didn't, but that's okay.
what if we did,
Again,
I'm sorry.
I'm not taking notice.
I'm sorry.
That's
What are the percentages?
I'm talking
What did
about,
we
I'm
just give
so
the fire
sorry.
chief, 12.5% or
no, we
11%?
gave 9,000 over 110.
Troy and I understand.
I'm sorry.
Don't be.
What do you guys think?
Sound like enough.
Do you think, how about
Yeah.
110, 115? Oh,
What I think is 125, but, you know,
what about 110,
but
115?
I want to be able to give
I'd
you
like
something
something
this
this
year.
year. 120. Because it isn't just
Something to look at,
It's
maybe
what we have.
105 or
Kim,
110.
that'll include whatever percent the town gets too every year, correct?
No.
Because it's contract.
No.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
do we vote on all 3 years now, or?
Yeah, I think it's probably a
And that's what
better
it's
idea because we have,
presented to the town?
because we're going to enter it, so by entering it, you're going to have to support it because we have to fund it because it's a
But
contract.
the verbiage on the article is going to be, it'll state all 3 years.
No.
No, it'll only
no.
state
It's
this
only-
year.
You're only appropriating the money for the year we're in.
Yeah, so we don't even have
So
to,
then next year,
You'll just have it in the line.
we'll
So-
have it in the line item.
Yeah, so whatever you appropriate this year, whatever the amount is total,
Yeah.
it will just go to a line item next year, whatever that amount is agreed to in the contract. Same thing we do with the, unless,
fire chief.
you know, if you have a contract that you haven't agreed to, then it has to have a separate article.
Is that what's happening?
If you have a 3-year agreement where the numbers are all set,
Yeah.
if you fund the first year, you fund in the second and third years. Like, well, that's one of the
but we're not stating what the second and third year is.
Well, not in the article, no, but we don't, I'll give you, for the patrol officers or the firefighters. The reason we have articles for them every single year is we negotiate the increase every single year. Back when dinosaurs ruled the earth, we did 3-year contracts with the increases built in to the contracts. So that if we approve the amount necessary for the first year of the contract, you were then signing on for the second and third. You won't see that happen here because we're negotiating every year right now But back then, you'd only see that article once every 3 years.
And I would suspect that we would do wage openers after that, like once, this was a mechanism to get them closer, and then we would do wage openers after that, like we do everybody else.
So if you funded, if you funded fiscal 19 and so if you fund fiscal 19 and the contract is signed saying exactly how much the town administrator is going to receive for 20 and 21, you don't go back to town meeting as a separate article, it's simply in the line item itself.
Just to make a really bad example, just to, so I can nail this home. So if we voted on 100,000 today and 200,000 for next year,
If the contract says 200, you're stuck.
And if the town voted that,
but the
then
town's
we're
not
stuck.
seeing the 200, they're only seeing the 100.
We'll see the 200 in the lineup, but that's how historically.
Well, no, but I understand what he's saying is, if I'm Joe Public or Jane Public at town meeting, I'm going to say, well, wait a minute, what's the town administrator going to receive the second year? What's the town administrator going to receive the third year? Same as they should if we were dealing with the patrol officers, the firefighters. Because we could go in there and say, hey, we got a 0 from the firefighters for next year. Well, great, what did you get for the second and third? Oh, it was 10% each. Oh, I'm not going for that.
But because, to Charlie's point, like we, for the last, I don't know, I'm thinking 10 years, I could be wrong, we've been doing wage openers, but prior to that, most towns never even do wage openers, so we have to kind of explain what a wage opener is when we go to MMA events, because they don't, they're like, what are you talking about? Because they always just sign these 3-year contracts. Pardon me? Oh. So.
Wow.
It said mixed martial arts.
Oh, yeah. Mass Municipal Association, yeah. No, the Mass Municipal Association, sorry. So when we go to events, they're like, what's a wage? I'm like, we're so lucky we have these wage openers. And they're like, what you talking about, Willis? But that's, you know. Remember that show? I love that show.
So, but basically, you discuss, I mean, how do I put it this way? It may even be illegal for the board or myself to then to say, go to town meeting, ask for this certain amount of money for the first year, and we're telling you the second year is this, the third year is that. And then, if we make a change in that and not go back to town meeting in separate article, I think you've got legally you're gonna have a problem doing it. I think if you do for the board and the board you say, we're in agreement, we're funded X for fiscal 19, Y for fiscal 20, Z for fiscal 21, the board and myself are bound to that if town meeting approves it. Now, doesn't mean one party or another could go back to town meeting and say, hey, we'd like to make a change in the contract. It would still mean going to town meeting and asking specifically for changes.
I think the starting point should be 110 or higher, personally.
As long as we don't think it's going to get shut down, it's fine with me.
Well, we'll have Charlie speak to it.
No, but you know, this is just a testament of what he does for us, because.
Yeah, you don't have to sell me on Charlie. I've only been to one town meeting, so I don't know what
But I'm just saying, like, that he even, like, has to help us with this. Like, if we didn't have him, we're like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Well, I do, what will I say?
Well, you're chairman, you get to say.
Yeah, no, yeah, so.
If we started at 110, then 110, 115, 120.
Okay.
That gets us closer to the average, which was the intent behind the fire chief.
Yeah, because
it was in a realm of.
Because these people could leave at any time, and in order to find you know, we're never going to find another Charlie. It'll be difficult to find another Jason for sure. You know, it'll be difficult to find.
And I went through a lot just to hire him. I was in when he got hired. Don't want to do that.
But I think that we're using the same rationale for both.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, you guys cool?
Now she has.
It's all been settled. Are you good with that?
Yeah.
It's just hot outside. I'm always cool.
It's too late.
They know it's with love in my heart for them. I'm so sorry. You know I'm going to beat myself up.
That's what you should.
So.
I'll bring the bandages.
I want film.
Next time you can do that.
So is this going to be significantly rewarded then for?
No, it would be a line item, and you're adding the money into the line item. I think when the board speaks the article, they can explain, this would fund the first year of a 3-year contract. The second year, we would appropriate X, coming up, and so is why. The third year, we would put grade Z.
And that's why I kind of wanted to talk about the fire chief's finish this vote. That's the reason why I wanted to talk about the fire chief's third year, because we're going to have to be able to explain that to people at town meeting too. So that's something we're going to have to kind of talk to him about. But let's finish this, right? And then we can talk about that again if you don't mind. And then we'll let you guys go home. Sorry, it's really
So Article 10, the state of the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of money for line 3 town administrator's salary of Article 4 of the annual town meeting of May 14, 2018 to be added to the $95,434 previously appropriated for this purpose for a total of, for the first year, $110,000, or take any other action relative thereto.
George, just realized your mics were under your glass.
I'll make a motion to approve Article 10 as read.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Awesome. Thank you. So can we just talk, and then we'll all break up, but can we talk about that third year of what that would look like? Because I think it's going to be important for us to be able to, present that at town meeting, and I want to do that on Monday. So we'll just go back to the fire chief again. So with the fire chief, we were going to do 119, and then I think we talked about 125 for the last year of his contract. Is that what we had talked about?
He has one more year left.
Yeah. And then he would go to wage,
Are you all comfortable with that?
Yeah, I mean,
So that's what you would,
thank you for asking.
No, you had said that originally, that's,
I'm just teasing.
well, he knows I get a little paranoid, so feed it.
I'm very comfortable, I'm sitting on a cushion seat.
Are you comfortable with the 120? Yeah, for the third year, yeah. And you guys are comfortable? Okay, so I don't know if you just want to officially vote that, so that,
Our recommendation for the third year?
yeah.
Okay.
Voted out, but-
Should be next year.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, so we're turning to Article 9. It's not about the.
So you're just gonna, just approve the second year of the fire chief's
Make a
contract?
recommendation, the Board of Selectmen to approve the second year of the fire chief's contract at the rate of $125,000. Is there a motion to approve?
I will make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion or question? All those in favor?
Kid, are you all right?
Thank you so much.
Am I all right?
Yeah.
Is there any public participation? Calendar, we have a posted meeting for next week,
Do we have it
6:30.
posted for tomorrow?
No.
We have one posting for tomorrow in case, basically the discussion you were to come into tomorrow was
right,
because of the
right.
building,
Yeah,
because of the council on aging. I mean, we're still having, we still have the building committee coming in officially at 8:30, but we're not going to have really any more information in 24 hours than we have right now. Sandy and I are not going to be here. Steve, the OPM and the architect are going to be working, but we're not going to have any more information to present to the board. So you're invited to be here, but the whole reason we were doing the Tuesday one, besides the selectmen having its regular meeting, was to really talk about the council on aging project.
So you're not meeting Thursday at 4 then?
We are meeting
Oh, you
Thursday
are.
at 4 because that's a review of town council and
Right.
town moderator.
Yeah, and that's really just a procedural thing, like it's not voting on the articles, it's just you're there. Usually we just have the chair attend that meeting, anybody's welcome, it's a public meeting. But it's really just to kind of go over each article and understand the procedural
And
process of it.
especially with
So-
Dennis coming in new
Yes.
for the first time, we want to, you know,
Yeah.
this one, we're going to do stabilization fund over here, it needs a 2/3 vote.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, I think I can make that, I'm almost positive I can make that Thursday afternoon meeting.
It's
Thursday at
4 now.
4 o'clock, yeah, 4, that should be fine. And then our next meeting will be
Monday at 6:30.
Monday at 6:30.
Yep. I posted Monday and Tuesday just in case.
Awesome, thank you.
At the,
Because if I post it,
Yes.
then it won't happen
Right.
yeah, thank you.
at 6:30.
Anything else? No, then we'll make a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second the
It's a
motion.
late finance
I'll
meeting.
third.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Right, we're doing it 9:58 PM.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.
I need,